The following is a conversation with Ed Traversari. He spent over 3 decades of his life as a music promoter with DeCesar Engler, the legendary music promotion company during the heyday of rock and roll in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. You can see him featured on Behind the Stage Door, a documentary about the music promotion business on Apple TV. Currently, he is a professor in the Sports, Arts, and Entertainment Management program at Point Park University. We sat down to discuss his career and his many stories, music, life, and much more. This is the Not Just Politics podcast. To support us, check out our page on the Say What Needs Saying network and the links for our social medias in the description. Enjoy. But so, tell us about when did you get when did you like get the word about the documentary Behind the Stage Door being made?
Oh, for the documentary.
Yeah.
You know what? We started about at COVID. It was right around about that time. What basically happened was Rich Engler, the guy that I was a promoter friend with and actually worked with him for 35 years, he wrote a book called Behind the Stage Door. And I helped him with this book, got him all the pictures, and helped create some stories with him and for him and all that kind of thing. And then the book came out, and some producers from the Pittsburgh area happened to get the book. And unbeknownst to Rich, he just reached out to him and said, "Hey, we really like the book. And would you be interested in us doing a documentary film on your book?" And he said, "Why not?"
Yeah.
So that was the beginning of it. And but it took some time because there was a time when they had to stop recording.
Yeah.
Because they were going out to shoot a lot of people for the documentary, and they couldn't go out and do the one-on-ones with all the people that you saw.
So
we had
many.
some done, and then we had to hold it. And again, I was just a small part of it. I mean, I don't want to make it seem like it was anything to do with me. It was his documentary. It's just that since I worked with him so close for all those years, I was interviewed and I was
featured.
a part of it. Yeah, I mean, it was great. But I've helped him actually promote it. I've just lined up probably 20 interviews for him all over Pittsburgh. He's
Holy
done.
cow.
Yeah, to help promote it, which we did recently because even though it's streaming, we had 2 shows at the Carnegie Science Center on the IMAX. So I was trying to help him get the word out for those 2 events, and they were good. And now it's just streaming, and anybody can get it.
I tried to get to one of those, but I wasn't able to get to them.
Yeah. It was really good to sit on the big screen. I mean, that screen's amazing.
Oh yeah, there's so many big names on that documentary.
A lot of big names.
The manager for Kiss. There's the one of the founding members of Rush, Kansas.
Absolutely,
There's so many big names on that.
Well, when you do a documentary, obviously you're trying to put as many people that can support the concept. It's not only about the person generally. It's always like, well, how did it all happen and what was going on? So I'm sure the producers were probably saying to Rich, who else could you secure? Because there'd be a lot of people that I'm sure he wanted on that couldn't reach. He wanted maybe Bruce Springsteen to talk. Maybe Bruce wasn't available or something, or Billy Joel. And maybe Billy Joel's people said, hey, he's not really doing it. He's touring. So you make a short list of all the people that you're a little bit more closer with. And Kansas, Rush, all those bands.
So many
bands that we did a lot of. Kiss, for sure, that Doc McGee, who's a good friend of Rich's, has managed Motley Crue. He managed the Def Leppard, John Bon Jovi. He's managed all kind of people.
Oh, yeah.
But he mainly has Kiss, so he came on. What was good was, in this documentary, it kind of takes you from what it was to the way it is.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
there's a big change in our business side. The industry has just changed so much from just going to concerts to how you hear about them to how the bands react, so...
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in there. It's a really great history of Pittsburgh.
Yeah,
I
a lot
think.
of Pittsburgh.
And what I thought was really cool was it's sort of like an underdog story.
Right,
like,
for sure.
This wasn't something that Rich Engler was supposed to do.
Not
it wasn't
really.
the normal path.
Not really, man. He talks about, he and I are both drummers, so we always talk about playing drums, and he was basically a drummer in a band back in the late 60s, like so many of us were. He's a little bit older than me, so he has me by a few years. But, it's when we saw the Beatles play on Ed Sullivan, everybody just wanted to become a musician, went and bought their instruments. And so, you're playing in a band, and it was really kind of like myself. It took me to the next level because we both realized we were not going to continue to play in our band years ago.
Yeah.
And so in his case, it was like, hey, maybe I'll start bringing some of these bands into concert, like, because the bands were taking off in the early 70s. The same thing with me, only I was about 5 years behind him.
Okay.
So when I was playing in my band in high school and early college, and I realized, my band's probably not going to make it to the big thing, but if I can't be on stage, I always said this, how close on the stage can I be? And then I realized that maybe being a promoter was one way of getting to be close to it, and so I pursued that. But the big thing about it was when I went to Robert Morris, we had nothing to do with entertainment out there. There was no classes for it, so I was a straight business major. And the only reason why I even got to where I got to was because they used to bring a lot of concerts to campuses back in the 70s.
Yeah.
Now you don't see that because there's just so many other venues. But back then it was a very popular place to bring shows. And I was probably a sophomore, and I went to the advisor one day and I said, who's bringing all these shows on campus? Who's booking them? And let's say he says, Jeremy. And I go, well, I'm sure Jeremy's a really nice guy, but he doesn't know anything what he's doing because nobody's coming to these shows. And he goes, and I said, me and my roommate really feel like we know a lot more about the bands than anybody else here. And he said, well, why don't you do something about it? And I said, well, I don't want to do any of the work. We just wanted to complain. Because you sound like a typical college student. I said, no, I'm just kidding. I said, what do you want us to do? And he goes, you got to get on a committee. I said, man, we don't like committees. This was 1970. I don't want to go on a committee.
You don't like committees.
No,
yeah.
I don't like committees.
No.
And they go, well, you should get on a committee. And I said, what's it called? And they said, Student Activities Committee. Here they call it CAB, Campus
Activities Board, yeah.
I said, what do we got to do? They said, well, you get on a committee, and then you get a chance to book some of the entertainment. You get to be part of it. So I went to my college roommate, and I said, hey, guess what? We're going to be on a committee. He goes, I don't want to be on a committee. I said, yeah, you got to be on a committee with me. So we joined the committee, and we learned a lot that first year. During that year, they were now going for the following year's officers. And I said to my roommate, I'm going to go for president. You're going to be vice president. He goes, who's going to vote for us? Nobody knows us. I go, that's not a good attitude. We're going to win.
Yeah.
And we won. So I became president,
awesome.
He became vice president. And it really did change probably a lot of my life because at that point I started realizing, wait, maybe I want to be a promoter like my real job.
Yeah.
And I'm not getting taught that at Robert Morris. I'm only learning about marketing and business, but I'm doing it on the side. And I went to every concert I could go to back in the 70s. I mean, I was going to everything because it was very cheap back then.
Yeah.
You could see shows for $5,
My dad has...
I'm sure he has tickets and stories. And
he's listening to this probably, and he's like, oh my gosh,
yeah,
all the shows that he...
He's probably remembering. We probably were at the same shows.
You probably were. He probably went to you definitely went to a ton of shows that you promoted.
I promoted for sure.
Definitely.
So I ended up graduating, and I thought, well, you know what? That was fun. And I'll probably still go to concerts for fun, but I'll never be in the business because I don't know anybody that could get me in the business, unlike we do now with all of our connections and everything.
Yeah.
So I ended up graduating, and I got a job that I wasn't particularly fond of, and it was in a retail. And I thought, well, I got to make some money, so I'm going to work there. And like I say, I'll maybe play my drums on the weekend or whatever. And about 6 months into my job, the company was called DeCesar Engler Productions.
Yep.
Two guys, Pat DeCesar, Rich Engler. They ran an ad in a newspaper because that's how you advertise for jobs.
Yeah.
And it said, looking for a runner. And I didn't even know what a runner was, but I said to my wife, I got to be that person. Yeah. So I called him the next day, and I called from my store where I was working, retail, because he wanted to talk during the day, and I didn't have, of course, no cell phones.
Yeah.
My manager's at the end of the building, and I'm over here, and I'm like whispering, hello, yeah, it's just Rich Engler. I'm applying for the job. And we get interviewed, and he said to me, he says, I fired a lot of kids in the last couple of months. And I said, really, why? He says, nobody takes this job serious. He said, everybody tells me they want to work in this business, but when they get in, he says, all they do is want to hang around the band, maybe try to get their autograph, take the picture with them while they're working. And I said, he says, I fire them on the spot. And I go, well, I'd fire them too. He goes, really? Why would you do it? I said, well, why would those kind of people be able to do that? We're here to protect them from the band. He goes, I like that. He goes, why do you say that? I said, well, I promoted shows at Robert Morris. I'm a drummer. I'm a little bit tuned in. He goes, I like that. Call me back tomorrow. Called him back the next day. First thing he said was, I just changed my mind. I'm not hiring anybody. And I told him, you know what, that's not possible. He goes, what do you mean it's not possible? I says, that's just not possible. I said, this to me was like the epitome of what, and I didn't know anybody to get me there. So I was like so close that I was going to slide all the way back down the hill again. And I thought, that's not possible. And he loves this story because we're still best friends, and I always talk about it. And he goes, well, what did I say next? He goes, I said, you didn't say anything. He said, what did you say? I said, what if I work for free? And what did you say? What time can you come to my office? As soon as I said I'd work for free, he goes, this kid's crazy. So I literally quit my retail job that day, which you're supposed to give people 2 weeks.
Yeah, you are.
And I said, I can't give you 2 weeks. He says, you're picking up a band tomorrow at the airport in my Rolls Royce. And I go, wow, yeah? He goes, yeah. That you want to work, right? I go, yeah. So that night he threw me the keys and said, go practice driving the Rolls. I go, what do I have to practice for? He says, well, you have never seen a car like this. Rolls Royces are unbelievable. I mean, this was a 1958 Cloud, and it had more damn buttons and knobs, and it was like a cockpit.
Yeah.
So I practiced, and I went and picked up the band. I picked up 3 different bands. A band called America, who was a really big band in those days. Jeff Beck, who's a tremendous guitar player, and he still tours. And then Jefferson Airplane, which is still big. They still tour. Grace Slick used to be the leader. She doesn't tour anymore. So these were bands that I loved. But I had to be very cool when I picked them up. I couldn't talk to them too much, and I had to do my thing. And after those 3 shows, individually, they were like maybe a Tuesday, a Friday, and he was paying me $50 every time I drive. So it wasn't free. He paid me $50.
Yeah.
Which I thought, back then, I mean, I left a job that was paying, I don't know, $200-300 a week, but I didn't care.
Yeah.
And my wife was working at the time, and we didn't have any kids then. And after the 3 shows, he goes, you know what, you did pretty good driving that car. I said, good. I didn't want to be a limo driver all my life after I went to college for 4 years. He goes, no, I want you to come in my office and start working with me. That was 1975, and I stayed till 2007.
Holy cow.
When I came to Point Park, because we sold our company to Live Nation, and it all changed. And so I thought, now's my turn to give back.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's what I do.
So you've been at Point Park since 2007?
15 years.
Wow.
Blew my mind. When people tell me that, I don't even believe it. But every once in a while, they'll hit me up on LinkedIn when they do your anniversary sometime. They'll say, happy anniversary. I'm like, what about happy anniversary for what? They go, you've now been there 15 years. And I'm like,
well, LinkedIn tells you, or other people tell you.
I mean, other people through LinkedIn, they'll see it, tell Ed happy anniversary, and you're like, they say, and I go like, what is my anniversary about? I got married in March, and it's just like, anyways, time flies. But it's been great. I mean, we have so many classes now, and I mean, we have kids working everywhere. And I mean, I love that because I know that that's the way I was, as I just told you, and it's any business. I mean, in any industry, if you can find somebody to take care of you, like Rich took care of me, and that's what you do.
Yeah, that's great that you've been able to get so many kids to where you wanted to go, but just a lot easier, like give them a direct path to it.
Exactly. And that's not handy with entertainment because I knew whenever I had an intern one day over at Station Square. I was running an amphitheater there, right where the Highmark Stadium is. Before that, we had a 6,000-seat amphitheater. And this girl came in and she said, I'm your new intern. I said, oh, good. I said, where do you go to school? And she said, Point Park. And I said, oh, I've heard of that. It's across the river there. I see it. I said, what's your major? And she said, sports, arts, and entertainment management. I said, what the hell is that? She goes, well, it's a brand new major, relatively new. It was about 4 or 5 years old. She says, and I've just heard that they have entertainment above and beyond the sports. Because really everybody had sports management. Nobody ever added arts or entertainment.
No.
So I give the guys credit for that. But they hadn't gotten anybody to teach it yet, really. So the kids that were going there who wanted entertainment weren't getting much entertainment, which is one, she said that. And I thought, I should call somebody over there. So I reached out to who was one of the department people at the time, and we had a meeting. And about a year later, I quit Live Nation and taught my very first class, which was called Venues and Facility Management, as part-time.
That's sweet.
But I said, you know what? I don't really want to teach this. I want to teach entertainment. And they said, well, teach one class and we'll see where it goes. And I went from being what would be considered a part-timer to they asked me to apply full-time. And I never taught, but I thought, I had to get back and get my master's when I was 55.
Oh, really? So you went back to school?
I got it here.
Oh, wow, that's cool. Were you teaching while you got your degree?
They let me do it simultaneously.
Okay, there's a lot of
I
there's a lot of
faculty.
faculty.
I didn't want anybody to know that I was doing it. So it was really,
okay.
I just didn't want anybody to know. But
right.
It was so funny when I told my wife, but somebody from my family was going back to get a master's. And I have 3 kids, and they all graduated from college, but nobody got a master's. So I think I went through all 3 names, and I said, no, me. You. It's like Rodney Dangerfield when he went back to school after
that whole career you had,
Well, they told me, you know what, you got to have at least that. So I said, look, I want to teach. because I want to give back. So they said, do it. Boy, I tell students now it was the best thing that ever happened to me because I would never recommend waiting that long. If you're going to get your master's, try to get it really when you graduate from your undergrad or soon, because I'm going to tell you something. Going back to take tests later on, that ain't easy, as they say. You can only imagine, right? I was doing, heavy math, international business law. I would have to be studying, and I'd be like, this is crazy. What am I doing?
What am I doing? I worked for 35
I know, and it was up to me. It wouldn't have been necessary, but I'm not the one who dictated it, so I do have the plaque on my wall at the office. You can come see it.
There you go. Yeah, I'll have to stop by and check that out.
You're allowed to see anytime you want.
I would love to.
But that's how it worked out, so that's why I'm here.
Yeah, I remember like last year going back and like taking a math test, and that was 1 year, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't even imagine. And you were...
This was, literally 25, 50, 20, about 30 years later.
You got put right back in the ringer after all that time.
I'm in this classroom with much younger kids, and we're in groups and everything. And I used to tell the professor, don't go around the room and ask who I am or where I came from. Because when you get to me, I'm going to say, just pass. Give it to him next.
Just pass.
Because, it was like kind of
undercover.
Silly. I'm undercover here, man.
You're the undercover boss that was in the class.
Yeah, right. That's what I wanted to be now. But it worked out fine. I'm here, and here we are.
How many classes do you teach? Because I know you teach the class that we're in right now.
Yeah. I do 4 classes. Typically it's 4 or 5. You're allowed to class. I used to teach 5 a lot of times. But what's nice is now I teach 2 what we call business alive entertainment, which is the introduction, which you have, and then venue and facility management. The one I taught when I first came here, I still teach, and but now because we have probably about 8 entertainment classes, of which I've created and wrote the syllabus for, but I can only teach 4 or 5. I bring in part-time faculty to teach all those other classes. So I teach, we still have production tour management, we have, emerging trends, we have Pioneer Records class, we have talent and booking class, and these are all taught by other people that I brought in.
That's cool.
We just brought on Melinda Calese, who's our most recent full-time professor, and she's got a really big music background.
I think she came to speak in our SAM class.
Oh, I'll bet.
I think that was her.
She's got Women Who Rock.
Yes. Okay, that was her. Yep. Okay. Yeah, she was great when she came and talked.
Oh, she's great. Yeah, she's a singer-songwriter. Plus, she created Women Who Rock. I brought her on board about 5 years ago to teach one class, and then last year we were able to hire a full-time professor, and she applied, and she's now full-time.
That's great.
She's really good.
In that, I have to ask you about some, because we've heard some of these stories in class, but I have to ask about some of these. So I was watching the documentary.
I can't relinquish all my information.
Okay. Well, as much as you can tell, I guess. Because my dad was like, ask him about the toga party with Guns N' Roses, and that's in the documentary. Wow. And my dad knew about that somehow. I was like, right? Yeah, he did. He was like, ask him about the toga party with Guns N' Roses. That is. That's the craziest story.
Well, yeah, I know it is. Now, a lot of times, when you're in the middle of it, everybody tells it just a little bit differently.
Right.
So, Rich tells it on a documentary, excuse me, very much like I remember it. But I remember, maybe certain things were different. But it was basically the whole premise was we had Guns N' Roses and Metallica in a package coming to Three River Stadium, and it must have been in the 90s. And we got a call from somebody with their tour saying that we need you guys, you the promoter, to help us create a party for the band's crew and the band at the end of the night. And I remember them telling us that they would prefer to have a party at the venue versus going out to, let's say, a Hard Rock or someplace else to have because they would have to leave and you got to get transportation and all that. And we said, okay, that makes sense. Well, the first problem is you can't really get like the locker room or anything because they're not going to let them go in the Steeler locker room.
No.
So I think Rich talks about it was like the training room,
the weight room.
They
clear all the weights out.
Yeah, we got to get all that stuff out of there. But anyways, I remember the guy that was the one that at least told me about it, and I remember I asked him what the budget was going to be. And he basically said, don't worry about the budget. And I thought, I mean, don't worry about the budget. I like to work on numbers because we're in the music business. Where, if you go over the budget, somebody's going to be mad. And it could be you, the guy that was giving me the money.
Yeah.
But he was like very calm about it. He might have given me some like round numbers. So all of us put our heads together, and then we reached out to other people like our caterer and all these people that could help us provide this. Well, because let me backtrack. He says every night we play a show, it's a different party. Let's see. Wednesday night, you're the toga party.
Yeah.
And that's how it got to be a toga party. I'm sure if he was in Buffalo 2 days later, it was, I don't know, maybe some other
some other kind of party.
Yeah, so it was the toga party. And so, we had people work on it the whole time. And then, my recollection is on the night of the show, because I went in to see what it was like. And I know Rich went too. I didn't go with him. There was another guy that I was working with, and we were on the field as they were tearing down the equipment at, say, midnight, 1 o'clock. And we were talking about, we had to get that toga party together for a while. I wonder how it's going. And I said, we should go down and check it out. We have lanyards. We can go in. It was not for us, but it was. So we went down, and just what Rich explains, I mean, it was just bizarre. I mean, you walk in, there's these water fountains with that water spilling out, and there's girls.
Grapes with
the grapes are coming in. We had the grapes. That was big. Music everywhere. A lot of girls in there.
Yeah.
And it's like, I felt like I was a little kid, like wow, this is big time.
What is this?
Well, I've never been to a place like this before. And then all at once he comes down. I remember he came in with a bunch of people, and it was crazy. And I left, But it was just. Then I went to settle with the guy, because I was the guy that paid the bands, and so I was dealing with the tour accountant, and. My recollection was, and I could be wrong, but this is going back a long time. I think it was about $30,000 worth of expenses. And when I went to tell him what the expenses were, I thought he was going to go out of his mind.
Yeah.
But remember, he told me, don't worry about the budget.
Exactly.
So I finally, give him the receipts, like I was so nervous, it's 30.
You were leaning away as you were handing 30. It to him, yeah.
And he was so calm. He goes, who do I make the check out to? And I go, geez, here I am, nervous. I said, somebody just told me recently that he was probably coming out of L.A. recently at that time, where the party probably cost him 90 to 100 grand. So he probably thought Pittsburgh, it's only 30 grand,
Yeah, that's insane.
It was just in rental things and equipment and grapes, and added up.
All this food. And
and the food and the drinks. We had a DJ in there, I think. We had music blaring. Could have charged probably $20 a ticket to get in, I guess.
You could have ticketed that as well. You could have
been a ticketed event.
Not only did we sell at the concert, did that concert sold out, right?
Yeah, sold out.
Okay,
it was big. I mean, it was like
it was Metallica and Guns N' Roses.
Yeah, Metallica was not even as big as they are now, but they were big.
Okay, yeah,
they were on their way up, and Guns N' Roses were real big though. They had really taken off, so they were the headliner.
Yeah,
Metallica opened, but another interesting story was going into that tour. Axl was known to not show up on time, and when he would show up, he would want to play, and the shows would start like at 10, 11, sometimes even midnight.
Yeah.
And that's obviously that's not cool.
That's late.
And so that's really late because you're done at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
And, we were nervous. We were hearing about some of these cities where for some reason he wasn't. And I remember that either the city police or somebody caught wind of it, and they were very concerned that we better not go over midnight. I feel that somebody was trying to charge us $1,000 a minute for any time we were overtime.
$1,000 a minute.
But we were lucky that we didn't go into overtime because he played. I remember it rained during Metallica's show, and by the time we had the set change and he came on, it wasn't raining, and I believe he came on like he was supposed to. He was at the venue. And he played, and we never had no overtime because I think we were done by probably 11.
That's a costly overtime.
Yeah, it is a costly overtime. I've never heard of anything like that.
Oh, my gosh.
And we would have argued that, but, anyways. It was a good one. But he was infamous on that tour of things that weren't going perfectly.
Yeah. That's just the amount of money they're making to just say, we'll drop $30,000 on a party after
That's
a show.
my recollection,
and they
too,
were just,
yeah. I might have been off by a few numbers, but I mean, it's going back a long time. But it was expensive.
Even if it's, I think
it's 20. Or 10.
I think in the documentary, Rich Angler said it was like $10,000.
No,
but even then, I mean, then if you're dropping 10, and they were, how many shows do you think they were doing a week?
Probably about 4 nights.
So you're dropping $40,000 a week, and that's just,
yeah.
And the tour accountant's just like, who do I make the check to?
Yeah, back in the day,
That's
they were more interested in, in making sure that was good. I don't know if bands would do that now because bands are in a different world, man.
Yeah, I would doubt it.
They save money, they know that someday the money might stop. And plus, nowadays, I'll tell you, bands are, they still want to have a good time, but what I see, especially from the young bands, they're just so much better off. Excuse me, like they're healthier. They're trying not to do as much drinking and everything because it just kind of ruins a lot of their careers.
Many hard drugs. I mean, all those guys were on so many drugs back then. That's just
it was just different time.
They were just living large. They didn't. I mean, that's the mentality of like like I said, the new bands now are thinking, the money might stop. Got to save up. These guys were just. Probably not.
Yeah, it was just a different time.
Probably not a care in the world. They were just. I mean, we're going to keep playing shows, and it's just. I mean, that's
the way it was.
That's such a crazy time. Yeah, that would have been. That is the rock star mentality.
True rock star. Well, that's what Rich talks about in his documentary that you saw in the 70s. I mean, it was like nobody knew what was going on. It was like glamour everywhere, and limos before there were tour buses, and a lot of money. So they were like, yeah, give me that on my rider and add that liquor and put those in my tour bus, and don't worry about it, and have that pool table for me when we get there so we can play in our dressing room. And okay, and you just do it because you wanted to take care of the band, because they were the band and you were the promoter and you wanted to make them happy. But there was a lot of money that was being wasted back then.
Who had the craziest rider that you can remember? At least I know this is a long time ago, but like who were there any that were just completely ridiculous?
It was always the big heavy rock acts, more or less the Kisses and the Motley Crues and those kinds of bands. The other bands, I mean the James Taylors of the world and whoever, I mean, they were quasi-normal. I don't remember them ever being too unusual where there'd be too many crazy demands. It would be, whatever they wanted. But when you get to that Van Halen thing with the M&Ms and, you hear those crazy stories, but there was a lot of things in there, I mean, that, people would want in, liquor that was very specific liquor that we couldn't find.
Yeah, yes, that's the crazy thing is my dad told me a story. He was like, apparently a band wanted Dom Perignon.
Yeah.
And they wanted like 2 cases and you can only find like a bottle.
Oh,
so they got
back
this.
Then it was.
So they got this like
probably
other.
something else. They didn't like it probably. They probably spilled it out or something.
Yeah, well, apparently, I don't know if this was you guys that promoted this show. I'm not sure, but apparently whoever was getting that stuff had to like call like Ohio, West Virginia looking for this stuff. And they could not find Dom Perignon, but they got a champagne that was similar, like
in the stature
and
the price.
And the band just like threw it all. They were just throwing it, dumping it out. They were
we did things like that. So I mean, it could be about anybody. Back in that day, the promoters were all alike across the country. So you would get that. And Dom Perignon was such a popular name that when the bands would hear it, they go, "We want some of that Dom Perignon."
We want some of that. We want 2 cases of it.
Yeah, it was back in the day, like when even I remember all the bands that we were doing, those English bands especially, they all wanted Heineken, which is kind of funny now because Heineken is a very I mean, it's normal beer.
It's popular, but you wouldn't you struggle to find it, I would imagine.
Back in the day, I mean, that was like the band of choice. I mean, I used to have to get like cases of Heineken. The band would be like, "I'm drinking Heineken. Look at this, that green bottle, But then the Dom, and so we would get on the phone, like you just said, and I would tell either whoever, me or whoever it was, we have to call like all these state stores for certain liquors or whatever, and the runner drive to Johnstown and pick it up if that's where it's at and bring it back. Or basically, if you were in Johnstown, I should take it the opposite way. When you get in those secondary towns, they had very less, so you had to like make sure you got it like in Pittsburgh before you went up there because they're not going to have it in their store. And they would either get upset or whatever, or they'd be really disappointed, like And back then they'd be like, "What do you mean you couldn't find it?" We looked everywhere. That was so important because when the band comes off stage, they look for that in their dressing room and they want it on that table. Yeah. Now, sometimes we would cut the rider back because it was very expensive. And if the show wasn't doing well, Rich and I would say, like, we got to cut some of this stuff out because it's costing us crazy money. Sometimes you didn't tell the tour manager, which was a problem because sometimes at the show, he would come in and say, like, "I just walked in the dressing room, the band's not in yet, and I see this, and this is missing." We go, we just didn't think you'd miss it. It's not a big deal because that was very expensive, and our ticket sales aren't very strong. And sometimes they would go out of their minds because it would be like, this means an awful lot to them, and I don't care what. You shouldn't have done that. And so I tell kids now that are ever working in our classes, look, you got to go over that with them in advance. You don't surprise them at the show, which we did because we didn't know any better.
Yeah.
You tell them in advance, can we cut the rate of catering back a little bit? We're not doing well. Because there's only so many areas where you can cut your costs. The band's going to usually charge this, and the spotlights are that. The stagehands are not going to go into cheap. But your catering, maybe that's a number we can say, instead of having steak tonight, can we have pasta? It's going to go $20 a head, going to go down to $12.50 a head. Instead of drinking this, can you drink that? And now you ask them in advance, and hopefully they're amenable to it, and they'll say, we'll work with you.
Yeah. How far ahead of time do you talk about that stuff with the
Well,
tour
the rider
manager?
comes in with the contract, and
Gotcha.
that comes in when you
Okay.
book the band. So that could be literally 6-8 months in advance.
Yeah.
But you don't advance the show and talk to somebody till probably maybe about a month out in front of the
Gotcha.
show, and you start going down everything, not just the catering, but you're going down the what time is the stage call, how many stagehands do you need, what time do you want the electrician, and then you get to the catering part. Let's go over catering.
Gotcha.
You start doing that about a month, and you have a caterer. Like we'd have our own in-house caterer that did just all of our concerts, and we'd send them over to the rider and say, okay, now here's what you're going to get, and we mark this off, and we have to get more of this, because catering costs a lot of money.
Oh yeah.
I mean, on an average show, nowadays it would probably be like if you were doing PPG Paints Arena or somewhere, Star Lake, it's probably 10 to 12.5 on one show.
Yeah, that's
That's
crazy.
how much, because you're feeding
a lot of
big
people.
crews.
Yeah.
You feed the stagehands that work with you that are local. That's part of what you try to do, and then you feed the crew, which could be those big shows. They could have 50 to 75 people traveling.
Yeah.
And you're feeding them, good meals, and then you got dressing rooms, and you got opening acts, and you have bus catering now. Before you finish, it's not unusual to have $10,000 bills for a concert. And if you didn't do very well, you're looking to reduce your costs because you're going to take the loss. So
Yeah.
you're trying to reduce your costs.
And then you have some bands like Aerosmith just storms out and never comes back because you gave him the wrong color.
Right.
You gave us dark blue towels and we
Right.
wanted light blue towels.
I know, and
it just seems
I
so
was in charge of
ridiculous.
the motorhomes for that. Rich tells that
Oh,
story.
yeah, they
Remember that?
wanted-
They ruined the motorhome. They just trashed them with mustard and ketchup, and I had to return the motorhomes to the people that I rented them from.
Oh no!
I mean,
did you
you
rent them
know-
from a company or from like individuals?
I think those were from individuals.
Oh,
because,
no.
Yeah, back then,
Oh,
I don't
no.
think the companies weren't available. This was early on. This was like maybe 70s. I couldn't find companies like you do now where you can go, and you can see RVs for sale and they're for rent too, maybe. And so you're renting them from a company. We found them through putting like some ads in the paper and said, do you have an RV that you'd like to rent? I don't think we said for Aerosmith. We just said, would you like to rent it?
Right.
And people would think, if I'm not using it, yes, I want to rent it. And people would use them for vacations
Yeah,
and take off.
yeah.
I don't know if I told them or not. I think I might have just said, we're going to use it for a vacation. Well, our vacation was letting Aerosmith use it. And then you got ketchup and mustard and
Relish
mayonnaise.
and-
And I don't know. We must have cleaned it when I returned it because I couldn't return it the way they did it because it was,
Oh,
it
no,
was
you
bad.
can't.
But we had a few bands that did that back then.
And did they really never come back? The manager said they're never coming back.
Well, no, they ended up, they did return for us afterwards because Aerosmith was a big band for us for many years. And, I probably got over it, I guess, Sometimes, but see, that's what happens. You don't want to tick off a band because, theoretically, what the band manager holds over your head is, we'll never play for you again. So when
Yeah.
you don't get them the Dom, when you don't get them whatever, they can just say, I'll get somebody else, another promoter, because you didn't satisfy us. Because there are other promoters. Even though we were the biggest one in Pittsburgh, you could get a promoter in Philadelphia to bring you in. It's just
Yeah.
in our concert business, the rule of thumb is we don't kind of cross, like I call it, like state lines. So like we would not do shows in Cleveland because there's a
Right.
Cleveland promoter.
Right.
Like he doesn't come to Pittsburgh.
It's a territory game.
It's territory.
Yeah.
And they still do that. There's no law that says that, but it's pretty much like that. Even with Live Nation. Live Nation has a Pittsburgh office, even though they're all owned by the same people, but they have a Philly office, an LA office. They have 50 offices. Back then we were all independent, but we all did the same thing. And if we allowed people to come into our market and start doing our shows, we would never make any money.
Yeah.
Vice versa. So most bands were and agents were very cognizant of that, and they would say, when we come to Pittsburgh, we'll play for you. But if you did screw up, let's say, back in the day, bands used to fly all the time. They didn't do tour buses. And, you rely on your limos to be there. And sometimes I can still hear it in my head, some English tour manager calling me, yelling at me because the limos are not at the airport and the band is waiting to get on in the car. Jethro Tull has just gotten out of the plane and your cars aren't here. And I'm not going to do my English accent.
And where's his limo?
That's exactly that. Where's the limo? And I would be like, my guy must be there. And you couldn't call a cell phone back then. So, guy would finally show up and pick him up, and he'd be like some driver that, you didn't really care for. And then later, you'd see the tour manager that say, yeah, bloody driver was not at the, and that's a very bad situation. And I'm going to have to tell the manager.
He didn't show up with a limo.
Right.
I don't.
Right.
I talk so much smack to British people on this show or on one episode, so this is a great opportunity.
Then you can be right in there, because I'm going to tell you what.
British people,
first,
am I right?
All those early years, we were dealing mostly with English, bands and English tour managers. It really wasn't, you'd have your Springsteen once in a while, and you'd have your Eagles and all that, but all those other bands were from Deep Purple and Alvin Lee and Led Zeppelin, and they were like, they were very miserable. They were always miserable.
It's all British people are.
They would, nothing's good.
I'm making that.
Even if something was good, it sounded like it was always bad.
Yeah. It's because the food they eat sucks.
I don't know what it was.
I'm making the blanket statement: British people are miserable.
Well, know when they come in, something wasn't always good. I had Queen one time. I'll never forget. Back in my early days, when obviously Freddie Mercury was there, and it was at the arena, and I was a young production guy, and I had my notes and he had his notes. Now we had no emails and no backup, so we only had what we had.
Yeah.
And I was production manager, and I was up at the arena, and this guy came in, and your bloody stage is the wrong size. You've got the steps on the wrong side of that, and your food is horrible. And I was
no.
First of all,
how can British people talk about what good or bad food is?
I'm
British
telling you
people
what they said.
that are listening, you're not allowed to say that, because the best food you have is fish and chips, and that's just okay.
I'm not going to get in the middle of that. I'm a very neutral person, but all I know is that
it's all a bit.
I was very nervous that morning, because I knew I wasn't perfect, but I didn't think that I had made all these mistakes. And I'm thinking that this is not good for me, because he's going to tell his manager, and the manager's going to be mad, and he's going to tell Rich Engler. And I was probably 25,
Yeah, and you're just, it's all over for you after
it's
that.
All done.
Yeah.
I'm going to be working in an insurance company.
Right.
No more concerts. But anyways, I remember Rich coming over about 12 o'clock, and again, how I recall it, and a pretty valuable lesson was, how's it going? I go, oh, not too good. And I didn't lie to him. I said, so-and-so here is not happy. But I had the stage built. I know the size he wanted, but he's saying, this isn't right, that's not right. And I was getting a little bit upset myself. I was getting mad. I said, I'm usually pretty calm, but I have Italian blood in it. When it starts to kind of bubble, boil, it's like coming up, and I'm thinking, I can get, and I didn't want to. And he goes, listen, I know you're probably right. He had my back. He says, I'm sure he's wrong. What you don't want to do is tell him what you really think, because, number one, we're going to get in trouble as a promoting company.
Yep.
Two, this guy, you're going to see a lot. Now, we didn't know that Queen was going to go away, because we didn't know Freddie Mercury was going to die. But we knew that in this industry, they don't work forever for one band. They're subcontractors. So that guy's going to come back with this band and that band and this band. And if you ticked him off today, he's going to say, wait a minute, man, I remember you. You were the guy that gave me the bloody stage that was over here and it wasn't over there. So I went out, and he said, don't burn any bridges. That was the line he used, which I loved. And I still tell students now, don't burn any bridges, because I ended up walking in, and in so many words, I thought, okay. So I go back in, and I see him, and I go, you know what? His name was Jerry. I says, Jerry was his name. Jerry, you know what? I think you might be right on some of this. How did you want the stage? Even though I knew I was right.
Right.
He goes, well, I wanted another 8 feet on the sound wing. And I go, I probably just didn't write it down right when you told me. So I go and I tell the building, hey, put another 8 feet on there. And they go, okay, fine. Where did you say you wanted the steps? I didn't want them in the center. I want them on stage left. I go, yeah, they put it there by mistake. Let's move them to stage left. Before you know it, everybody was happy.
Yeah.
We became buddies. And if I saw him, even recently, although he's still around, but when I saw him after those tours on different ones, he completely forgot about it. Everything was good.
Yeah.
And it was really good, because I was a little bit uptight that day.
It's the customer's always right sort of thing.
Absolutely. No, you're exactly right. And that's how we treated them.
Yep.
Right. Customer's always right. And the customer, they were our client,
Right. They want what they want.
We're promoters, and I mean, unfortunately, anybody, I shouldn't say anybody could do it, but there were enough other major concert promoters that could be brought in if there's a problem. Because we were brought into a couple markets where a promoter screwed up, and we went in and did somebody one time in Cleveland that we really shouldn't have gone in, and we even called the promoter because we felt weird, and we said, look, we're coming in, we don't really want to, and I think we made him our partner, silent partner, because we felt that was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
But the manager didn't want him because there was some issue. So we had, we could have said no, but it would have not been good. So we went in and did it. But yeah, that's right. You try to do what's right because the band's always right.
Yeah, that's how you got to treat it.
Band's always right.
Yeah, and as much as that, because and this example is like a small, tiny little fraction of that. But like, I worked at like Wendy's for a year, my freshman year of high school, and the customer's always right thing drove me insane. Of
course.
Like you told me you wanted this, and I put it on the thing, and then all of a sudden it's wrong, and
no catch up.
Especially on a busy day and the whole thing. Yeah, that's
it's
very
the same.
frustrating.
It's that way in any business. But now, if you don't take that attitude, that's when you get into problems. That's now we call it guest services, right? We have a fancier name for it. When you say you don't like something, they treat the guests properly.
Yeah, and as much sometimes I want to get rid of that mentality because it is annoying, and sometimes I'm like, I want to put them in their place. Like, no, you gave me the wrong thing, but that's what you got to do.
You could be in a situation someday where you bring it up and you think you're right, and if somebody would treat you, you want them to treat you the same way.
You kind of want
it goes both ways. Yeah,
it does. So I'm curious. Like, whenever I watched the documentary, it sort of seemed, and I don't think this was like the point, but it sort of seemed like it was like slow and steady, like rise to the top for you guys. Was there any sort of low lights in your career? Like, was there any like points where you thought like it's over, that kind of thing?
Yeah, there were a couple. They joined each other and made a partnership in '73.
Okay.
Caesar Engler, because Pat was doing his concerts previous. Rich Engler was coming on a little bit younger. They formed in '73. I joined in '75.
Okay.
So what I saw from '75 on was a lot of stuff, and I was tuned into the numbers, so I knew the numbers. And what really took you down was when you had losses. I mean, that would be it. I mean, there wasn't any, if the bands weren't touring that were very good at that time, or there was some issue, or the guarantees started going up and your attendances maybe weren't so strong.
Yeah.
It was always driven around maybe bad shows, or that's the numbers. And so there were a couple of things, but we didn't do too many things bad. I mean, we had a lot of losses, but what I mean is nothing monumental that would shut us down.
Right.
There were some things that took promoters out of business because their losses were so bad they could never get back. And that happened, but we had a small, tight-knit organization. Wasn't a lot of people, so but our biggest one, I think Rich talks about it in the documentary, was the Monsters of Rock.
Oh, yeah.
He talks about that a lot because I remember it very well. It was somebody was coming up with an idea called the Monsters of Rock, and it was going to be a national tour, and they already had Van Halen, Metallica, and Faith No More, and a bunch of other bands. It was like 5 bands. And there really weren't like festivals at that point, but they were going to do them in stadiums. And they took the Monsters of Rock from what they used in England. They were called Monsters of Rock tours. And so they asked us if we wanted to do the show in Pittsburgh. And to be honest with you, we were hesitant because Van Halen was big and Metallica was not nearly as big as they ever got to be, like when I talk about Guns N' Roses coming in. So, but they were really a heavy, heavy, heavy band. And Van Halen was not really that heavy. They were kind of a pop rock, like popular rock.
Yeah.
And I think we didn't think that the crowds would all mix and that there was enough good things to make the numbers go to what they needed to be. Because every time you do a show, you always look for how many people do you need to break even.
Yeah.
And by the time we added up the guarantees for all the bands, all the expenses at the stadium, promotion, catering, everything, whatever we needed, I think was maybe, I don't know, say 40,000.
I think you said 40,000.
He might have been 40, yeah. We did like 20 or something crazy. So when you do 40, you start to do your research. And we still do that to this day. People should do that. They call around, they check, numbers and likes, and before we used to check record sales.
Yep.
And you have a gut feeling, and you come back with, it's only your gut. You have nothing else to say. And if we thought that we couldn't do it, then we shouldn't do the show. Well, I remember we were getting pressured by these touring people. They go, oh, it's going to be great. Are you kidding me? Everybody's doing it. Why aren't you doing, blah, blah, blah. And so it was down to the 11th hour. They wanted the marketing directors, which I was, to come to L.A. like say in 2 days. And so you had to make up your mind. So we must have said, okay, we're going to do it. So I went with all the other promoter marketers, and we went to Los Angeles because they were going to announce it nationally at the Universal Studios King Kong lot.
That's awesome.
Because it was Monsters of Rock.
That's awesome.
We
talked about this in class. Yeah, we did. That's
so
awesome.
that's when we went out and we did it, and they announced it there. All the bands were there live. And anyways, I came back, we promoted it, but we unfortunately never reached those numbers, as a lot of other promoters. And that was a downtime because there was a big loss. I mean, it was several hundred thousand.
He said it was $400,000. That's ridiculous.
It was a lot of money. I mean, it was
yeah.
And you know, some people couldn't get back out from there. Somehow we made it back. So other than that, you know, we always had our losses. I mean, you know, this is the business. You make one night you make 20 grand, one night you lose 5. Next night you make 50, and one night you make this. You know, so and then you hope at the end of the year you've been able to make more than you lost, so you can control and have a profitable business.
Yeah.
And then we used to find other things to do too. We were very successful at Station Square for years with a Halloween event.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
We way before Kennywood came along, we did what we called Fright Nights at Station Scare. And
is that where they got it from?
Well,
is that where Kennywood got it from?
You know, Fright Nights is kind of a name.
Yeah, that's
that.
Yeah. Now that I think about it, that's just like
I mean, we had different
obvious
names
thing.
for a while. We had the Creep Show. We had just the Haunted Castles, and then we finally got to Fright Nights. But we had a large tent. There was a big tent that you could put about 5,000 people under.
Oh wow!
And we converted that tent into like these walkthroughs, and we had all these scary things in there. And then outside the tent, we put rides, and one price admission got you in to do everything, like a Kennywood, because they weren't doing it. So we thought, well, this is a good idea. We were very lucky. We were very successful for probably 10 years before they started doing it.
Right.
Once they started doing it, you know, you can't compete with it. I mean,
listen.
Kennywood's a gorgeous place
Yeah.
and beautiful, and they do a great job. So we eventually let it go, but we had probably, I don't know, a run of 15 or 20 years. And that
That's
was
great.
in October when we wouldn't have any shows outside. So we used our tent and amphitheater for something that typically you wouldn't have.
Yeah. Did you have any live music at that event?
We did. We had a stage that we used to book like Ozzy Osbourne tribute bands. And
Cool.
The worst bands you could come up with, so that it was like, it was like grunge rock.
Right.
Not national bands. They were all local bands.
Local
'cause we
bands,
didn't have
okay.
that kind of money. But it would be like, every night, or mostly on the weekends, on the main stage, not the main stage, but like a secondary stage, we're going to have so-and-so local band, and they would play like, just crazy stuff. But
That's
it would be
cool,
good
though.
for the young demographic. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a great.
Oh, we
bringing
had
in-
so many things. We were so big on sideshows. We wanted it to be like really weird stuff. And people
Yeah.
would say, "Where do you get all these weird people?" I say, "I just drive through the South Side and pick them up." You know?
That's all you need to do.
That's all I had to do. Get my
That's all
car
you
and
gotta
open my
do.
doors. I'm the ones that get in.
Yeah,
and
that's
I
all
picked
you-
up some crazy people, and they were great people, man. There was one guy that he's still around. He used to pound nails up his nose, and
He used to
pound nails up his
like
nose.
as a magic thing. Like he was
No magic. He'd take like a 10-penny nail and he'd take a hammer and he'd pound it up his nose. He always told me we all have a cavity that's there, that if we really learn the right way, we can all do it. And I said, well, I'm not going to try that. But he would be in our sideshow, so people would love the freaky sideshows. And he would perform. Oh, he had the fire. He ate the fire and everything. And
That stuff's
and
cool.
He walked on nails.
Okay, yeah.
But the one thing, when he'd get out his little box and take that nail, and then he would take a pair of pliers and he would pull it out and let it dangle on the wood. You could hear it dangle. So I don't think we want to have people try that at home. But
No,
I had one woman,
yeah.
one girl that actually she went as a half woman, half man. Hair was bald on one side, long on this side, and these were sideshows, that were fun.
Yeah, very
popular.
Halloween stuff.
And very talented people, actually.
Of course.
Very talented. So we did that along with all the other things, and we had another guy that was probably one of our most popular. He went by Drown the Clown. This was a dunk tank.
We heard about this in class, I think.
Yeah,
We heard about John
it was.
Clown. We did.
It's a dunk tank. And so he would dress up as a clown with the clown face painted.
Yeah.
And he'd put all his hair actually underneath his little cap, and he wore like a rubber suit underneath his jeans and bib overalls. And he would get up there, and he had a microphone attached just like this, and he'd sit up there, and he'd make fun of you out there. So when
That's
you went
great.
to throw balls, he would figure out something about you, whether you had glasses or whether it didn't matter what it was.
Yeah,
he didn't swear at you. It wasn't that bad, but it would irritate you, and it would irritate you so much that you would want 3 more balls. and all he did was keep making money.
That's a great market. That's a great strategy.
Oh, yeah.
That's great.
And he would be up there, and his big famous thing was high and dry. So if you knocked him over and he got back up and, he got sad, he goes, high and dry. Who's the next ball player? Come on, let's go. That's it. And he'd go down in the water and he'd come back up high and dry. And he had like a fake cigarette. He was always smoking it.
Oh,
and he
God.
was so
And
funny.
you just hate this guy probably. Oh, you hate him.
But he was so funny that I
Right.
had people that worked there that sometimes they wouldn't be working because they'd be standing around listening to him do his. I go, hey, you can't be listening. You got to go over there and do your job. All right, go scare somebody.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I'd be over there listening to him the whole time because he would really be good. Oh my God, we became friends. I'm still friends with him on Facebook.
You just got the Grim Reaper over there standing next with the thing, just listening to the.
Yeah, he's not doing his thing right. Somebody runs by and goes, "Boo!" I'm listening to him right now.
Yeah, I'm distracted by the. But he was witty enough, and he had the comedic timing that he could really tear people up with. That's great.
I think I told you guys in class I wanted to have a meeting with him so that we could maybe take him literally on the road and do some comedy because he was so.
Oh,
good.
that would be amazing. That would be great.
I thought it was going to work. Yeah, and I told him to come to our office for a meeting. Now I always saw him dressed as Drown the Clown. So one day I come to my office and I was going to go up the stairs. You walked in the lobby, walked up a set of stairs, and the secretary said, "Hey, this guy's been sitting here for like the last 20 minutes. He's here to see you." I go, "I don't know, what's he doing here?" "He has a meeting with you." I go, "I didn't have any meetings today." She goes, "He just told him to come down." I said, "Well, who is it?" He said his name's Kenny Dickman, but he goes by Drown the Clown. I go, "That's Drown the Clown?" I walked over. He looked like Steve Tyler, I said, from Aerosmith. He had hair down to his waist. He had his jeans jacket on and these tight jeans. He put all that hair underneath that hat. I said, "You know what, Kenny, I've never seen you outside of your makeup." He goes, "Yeah, no, I didn't want to bring the makeup down today." I said, I go, "Man, you blew me." I mean, never in my wildest dreams would you ever think this guy that's sitting on that thing.
It's a good disguise.
It was a terrific. He would never get, because somebody, would probably want to go after him after the show's over because he.
Oh, you'd have to have tearing people up in the crowd. You have to have a good disguise.
Exactly.
You have
he
to.
looked great. He still does the stuff. He tells me. I mean, I see him on Facebook. He goes out and does a lot of fright festivals, and he does, kind of like outdoor carnivals. And he'll go to the West Coast, and he'll go to summer, and down in Florida when it's warm, and come. What's he what?
Is he at Fright Night at Kennywood?
No, they should get him.
I wasn't the same. I don't think. Where can I find this guy?
Well,
I want to go. I want to go see him.
You love this guy, man.
I want to go see him now.
He's unbelievable. I don't know if he's still doing quite the show he did before. He came as Rage in the Cage because he's kind of in a cage thing.
Yeah.
We all said we don't like that name. He goes, "Well, all right, that's the name I use. Do you have a better name?" Somebody came up with Drown the Clown, and that became like the big name. And he probably still uses it today.
Oh, I mean,
because Rage in the Cage was kind of like, I don't know, it was cool, but it was kind of like
just hearing it now. I'm just
right. You see the difference?
It's such like a.
You want to see Rage in the Cage? He's making fun. No, you want to Drown the Clown to be doing it?
Because I hate clowns, and I would love to drown this clown.
Right?
Exactly.
He had the white. Yeah. He went in early, got all his makeup on,
whole thing.
Put the little hat on, and he was a really cool guy. Like I say, he never really got people too mad, but. So we did very well with our Fright Nights because we would think outside the box.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of rock concert promoters back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s just stayed to rock. But if we saw something that was jazz or blues, especially when we owned the Stanley, which was the old Benham Center, or the Benham Center was the old Stanley, we were booking Willie Nelson to whatever because we just wanted to be all for everybody in Pittsburgh.
Yep.
Because there was a blues community, there was a jazz community. And if we just stayed with rock, we thought we'd probably never have enough shows. So
and then you don't get to really move up.
And it was totally different the way, like Stage AE now with all these new young bands. I mean, you can do that all day long. Back then, there were bands, but there wasn't that many. So we thought, it was our opinion, let's take a good blues band, or and we did well with a lot of them. Sometimes we didn't, but sometimes we did.
Yeah, you got to take that bet.
We took a chance.
Absolutely.
Promoters are risk takers. That's all they are, is risk takers.
Yeah.
Rich talks about it all the time.
They're gambling
because you're gamblers and you're risking all the money, and there's nothing that says you're going to make money tonight. But we like doing it, and it was fun because I have a lot of people say, "Why don't you just go down to the Meadows and just go gamble down there?" Well, that's fun, but it's not like doing concerts.
Because especially if you. Excuse me, had a successful year, made a lot of money. You're just riding high.
Yeah, you're riding high.
You're just riding high.
Right, exactly.
That's probably crazy.
You know what? And even if it was not that much money, when you were done doing what you did for that one show, all teams members, marketing, production, and you can see that band on stage and you look out and you see it's a full house and everybody's having so much fun. It's a rush, you know. If you're into it, it's a rush. No matter if you were doing baseball or theater or live entertainment.
I mean, everything that. Yeah, I mean it's the same.
It all comes
the
together.
Same feeling. Absolutely.
Vice versa, if it was a bad night where you ended up having a bad sale, it didn't go well. You're like, man, you know, I'm responsible. I should have done something else to get those tickets. And really, maybe you did everything you could do. I always tell people, as long as you can check the boxes, you can't do everything. But if you check it and say, I did that, okay. But if you don't have those boxes checked and you think, well, maybe I should have done those things, it could be the difference in the ticket sales.
Yeah, you got to have that checklist.
You got to have a checklist.
Checklists are very important.
Yes, they are.
They are. They are.
Do you have them? Do you use them?
Every day.
Yeah, good.
Every single day. Before I go to bed, I make a list of like what's the 3 most important things and then 3 like side things. And if I can at least get the 3 important things done, it was a good day.
That's a really good one. That's really important. No, I still do it myself. But you know, one thing I found was when I started working, and you're really working, like not school, you're in there every day. I would never get to so much of my stuff, you know, because I always call people put fires out all day, you know. So when you're working all day, this band, that call, this guy, that guy, he tears me away from the phone. And I would say, I had this to-do list and I didn't do anything on there.
Right.
And it's really sometimes frustrating, but you know, it's life in the fast lane.
Yeah, and honestly, I feel like it makes me more productive. Like, I would never have gotten all that stuff done. And then I found like I get better at getting more stuff done with my day if I make that list.
You have something to look back at. And maybe once you move it up to the next day. I mean, I remember when years ago.
You got to move things around.
Yeah, years ago we used to have something called the day timer, and I used to use this day timer all the time like that before we got into, you know, keeping lists like that. But the day timer was like that. It was written to help you get to the next day and keep your appointments better and all that kind of stuff. And you know, when you're working, no matter what you're doing, unless you're just doing this one job every day and you take this and you move it to there, which that's not what we're teaching, your schedules are going to be crazy. Yeah. And you cannot, I mean, you can put it on your phone now, fortunately, and all that, but it's hard to keep control.
Oh, yeah, Google Calendar saved me. Yeah. I don't know why I never made a Google. This is the first year where I made it like a strict Google Calendar. Yeah. I don't know why I didn't do this 6 years ago.
Live and learn.
I should have done this so long. I should have done it my freshman year of high school. I would have had so much stuff figured out.
Just think.
But
maybe you would have been much more successful than you are now, just sitting here doing this with me.
Yeah. No, this is great. This is great. I love talking to you. But yeah, I think that's an important thing. I think like waking up in the morning and knowing, like this is what you got to get done.
Yeah, for sure.
It helps me get my day started.
Especially if you're in a detailed type of business.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even if it's just, you know, the to-do list, it can be major things, but, you know, and it's appointments. But I mean, if you're in a moving, you know, type of a business where everything is like, you know, and that's what we are. I said, you know, the phone call comes in on your cell phone even, and now you're on to this. And like, you better take notes from that because you have that to do. And then you didn't forget about this yet, you know, because you never got to that. And that's going to be tomorrow. And if you don't do it by today, you're too late. I mean, it's just, it doesn't always work out. You know, in the day you sit down and you hope that, like you said, maybe the majority of the things you dealt with, maybe more than you would have, you didn't put it down, you know?
Yeah. I'm curious, like, what's the day-to-day like in the business? Because it seems like you're booking show. How many shows do you think you guys would book in a month?
Oh, for the music business side, you know, when we were going strong and we owned the Stanley, especially, you know, we might have 15 shows
in a month.
In a month,
okay, that's not bad.
Which is a lot of shows. And
so every other day, pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, it depended. You know, a lot of times, you know, you want weekends, but you couldn't get weekends. But we would have a whole bunch of Stanley Theater shows, but then we'd have a bunch of Civic Arena shows back when the arena was in. And then when we finally had Star Lake, we'd have the amphitheater shows, and it could be more. Like right now, the Stage A Enos guys even do more shows. Yeah, because they only do it to one place. We were doing them everywhere, so we were running everywhere. Live Nation in the summer, you know, we'll have quite a few shows, but they're booking Star Lake, you know. But in the non-amphitheater season, they're busy, but they're not busy every night, you know. But it's kind of hard to say. But like a Brian Drusky, who's a local promoter, used to work for us. I mean, he's really busy, but he does a bunch of shows where it's Carnegie Music Hall, he does Hard Rock, he does Jurgles. He books a lot of clubs, and those clubs, they want bands every night. Yeah. Now, they're not big acts, but he's got to be busy, so he does that. Then he books some of the bigger stuff at Homestead down there.
That's the guy that started Drusky Entertainment.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
He worked for us for probably about 10 years maybe or something. He was our guy. He was doing a lot of production back in our day, and then he left Live Nation, and instead of just getting into production, he decided to become a booker. He was always a booker, but not heavy booker, and now he's big-time booker. I mean, he books, I think he books 500 shows a year.
Holy cow.
I mean, really.
That's crazy.
That's a lot of shows. I don't know how he keeps it straight sometimes. Seriously.
Some people can just...
He's good at that.
They can just keep it all here.
He must be keeping it there.
He must be that kind of guy. Well, in the documentary, Rich Engler said he stopped counting shows that he promoted at 6,000.
Yeah. Yeah, he always says that. And I used to think that I was doing maybe at 5,000 because he had more shows than me before he started between those early 70s up till 75. But because I tried putting an average, and it's hard because we weren't keeping excellent track.
Do you think they're keeping tabs on it now? Do you think they're keeping more data on that kind of stuff?
People ask all the time, not only how many shows you do, but like, what shows did you do? And now you're thinking, I want to document that so that when I'm 60, somebody's 30s now, saying when I'm 60, maybe they have better, and plus we have better ways to document it because it's all in your files. It's on your computer.
Yeah.
We just had hand files.
I was going to say
paper. And so, it's a lot harder. There was nobody making like these master lists. But what we could do is say, how many shows did we average per month at a certain venue? How many did we do then for the year? How many did we do for how many years? And a lot of times you just kind of multiplied them across.
You kind of get an average.
Yeah, right, because we were doing clubs, we were doing stadiums, we were doing amphitheaters. I mean, we were doing literally we were doing Johnstown, Erie, State College, Harrisburg. We were everywhere,
Yeah.
So we were busy. We had a lot of shows.
That's a ton of shows. That's a lot of shows.
We really did, and we didn't have a ton of people, so we were all very busy.
Yeah.
Because we were always at the shows. So, I had many times when we had 2 shows in one night, and that would be difficult, where we'd have to send somebody else from our office to, like, say, Harrisburg, and I would be in Erie, because I just had 2 shows in one night. We'd have to just, say, you do that, I'll do this one, or Rich would be in Pittsburgh and I'd be in Erie, and I'd be doing a show, he'd be doing a show,
Yeah, so you doubt that's crazy.
We had a lot of double nights,
Yeah, I guess like with hindsight, back, because that was like the beginning of like the rock concert promotion business. You wouldn't really think to like, oh, let's record all of this. You were just in the.
Now we get mad we didn't. Fortunately, we.
But that's hindsight is 2020. You wouldn't have known back then.
No, we did. I was going to say, fortunately, one thing that we did do that I'm glad we did was we started taking a lot of pictures, and a lot of promoters in the early 70s really weren't documenting their stuff. Our one partner, DeCesar, he never. It was never. I don't think it was never super important to him. So therefore, he didn't go out of his way to make sure he had a photographer to shoot the Beatles. Okay, he did the Beatles, or like Jim Morrison, Janis Joplin. He did them all.
Holy cow!
And I don't think he has a picture of any of them because it wasn't even getting pictures of the group. It wasn't cool to get pictures with the artist backstage or anything. It just wasn't. It hadn't come up yet.
Yeah.
So fast forward in the 70s. When we took over the Stanley Theater and bought it in 1977, and we had been together, a couple of years, I think Rich and I both together said, we should start giving these bands something, especially when they sell out. And we, yeah. I think what might have precipitated, I think he mentioned this in the documentary, we got a #1 that came from us. The Billboard magazine sent us a #1. We were the #1 theater in the country the very first year, and we were just shocked. And the one was really nice. It was kind of a glass like this, and had a 1 there. It said, DeCesar Engler, #1. I could not find at that time maybe another #1 that we could get made every show. But in the Stanley Theater building where we were, there was a products place where they had plaques. So I went down and must have said, with Rich, however, get a 9x12 plaque, the nice wooden plaque, and can you inscribe whatever we want? And the guy go, yeah, whatever you want to put. So we took our DeCesar Engler logo, had that be constant at the top, Stanley Theater logo at the bottom, and then every show that was sold out or really close to it, I would just call the guy a few days in advance and say, here's the information for the plaque. DeCesar Engler presents KISS, date, how many tickets we sold, what the gross was, and everything else was standard. And it would be a really nice plaque, but it would be easy to do. It wasn't expensive, and I would get it in time for the concert. Then on the day of the show, kind of my thing was to get the plaque, go find a tour manager early in the day or in the evening and say, look, we want to give us to the band tonight. And they'd go, oh, that's really nice. Can we get a picture with them after the show? You got to ask permission.
Yep.
And he would say, you know what, let me check. We should be fine. You have a photographer? Yeah, I have a photographer. Okay, we'll do this right after the show's over. Band's in the dressing room. I'll come get you. You come up. So we started that routine, and it really worked kind of like clockwork for many, many years everywhere. I have to go get my photographer, say, stand here. We're going to go backstage any minute. Wait for the guy. Rich and I go up. You talk a few minutes to the band. Hey, great show tonight. Hey, you mind if we get a picture? We want to present you with this plaque. Oh, thank you. We take the picture, and it was for two reasons. One is for us to collect the picture, I guess now you look back at it. But more importantly, I wanted to send it to what we call the trade magazines in the entertainment business and ask them if they would put it in. And we started getting all these magazines would put our picture in there. And so it would be like people would see this all over the country, and there'd be like a promoter would say, how do you get your picture in that darn magazine all the time? We'd say, well, we just taking pictures and we're sending them. That was good. But what was really good was after 25 and 30 years go by, you forget about all those bands, and we both kept them in these like bins all the time.
Yeah.
So finally we started putting them out. Stevie Ray Vaughan, Frank Zappa, Robin Williams, all these people that have passed on, Rodney Dangerfield, and you're thinking like, man, it's a good thing we took those pictures.
Absolutely.
And then they're in the
documentary.
Yeah. I have in my basement. Rich has his basement. You know, we have this big display of all our pictures.
That's great.
You know, and I mean, it's everybody from, you know, NSYNC to the Backstreet Boys, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
We did it with almost everybody. There was very few. We never got one with U2. We never got one with like Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. There was a few bands. We had them with McCartney. We had them with Ringo.
That's awesome.
We had some pretty big ones. I mean, the one with McCartney was unbelievable. Can I just tell this real quick story?
We have time.
No problem. Well, I don't know if Rich told this one on documentary, but I recall it like this. I get a big plaque to take back. And it's the same thing, you know, the Caesar Wrangler congratulates Paul McCartney for selling out. I must have asked the tour guy the day of, and he said, oh, yeah. He says, but you know what? We have our own photographer. Don't worry about bringing your guy back. And sometimes they say that. I said, okay. I told my guy, you're not coming back. Guy comes and goes, hey, you guys ready to meet Paul? First of all, that's unbelievable.
That statement alone is like, am I?
Exactly. Just when he said that, Rich and I were both probably not able to walk backstage because our legs had just gotten so flimsy, right? So we go back, and he goes, okay, here, before we get there, I'm going to introduce you both to Paul. A photographer will be there. I'll be there. And then me and the photographer will leave, and you three guys can just chat. We go like, what are we going to chat about? I'm thinking, right? Now, I'm not going to talk about anything, so I'm going to let Rich do all the talking. Because he's older, he runs the company. I'm just coming along for the ride.
You're just along for the ride, yeah.
So we get backstage, and this picture's in my office, by the way, if you ever want to see it. It's hanging.
Well, I got to stop by and check it out.
See it. And we're back in the thing, and we make the presentation. Picture gets taken. A guy introduces us, and they go, hey, Paul, we're going to leave, and we're going to start the show real soon, though, so let's not make too long. And he leaves, and he goes, no problem. And we start talking small talk, and the beginning was like, hey, I'm really glad to be in Pittsburgh. He hadn't been in Pittsburgh since he was playing for the Beatles show, which ironically was our other partner, who was still our partner, but he wasn't there that night.
Right.
So we brought it up, and I don't know if he knew his name, but we go, yeah, our other partner, he had the show. And he goes, he says, I love it here in Pittsburgh. He said, it reminds me a lot of London, I don't know, steel mills. He went to the whole thing.
No way.
Yeah, it was really cool. And then out of nowhere, he asks us a question. Now, remember, the show's about to start. So they do this right before, they put the intro tape on, we call it. And he says, this was in the 90s. So you have to remember the 90s. That's the beginning of Nintendo.
Yep.
You ever hear of Nintendo, right?
Of course, yeah.
All right, so there was something called a Nintendo Festival that was going from city to city that we were doing, as many other rock promoters were doing. And what that meant was you would come to the convention center for 2-3 days, and they would have maybe 50 Nintendos and Game Boys and all these things in these wooden things, and you would come play them, and you would compete throughout the weekend, and eventually, at the end of the weekend, the winners would come up on the big stage and play like around 8 of them, and you would compete. It's kind of like esports.
It was basically it's the beginning of esports.
I tell Steve Tanzilli, he's always, I go, your esports means nothing to me. We had this back in Nintendo, okay? I says, that's where everybody stole it from. I says, and then you have one winner who was going to then go and compete in Florida with a Nintendo festival nationally.
Holy cow.
So we did one here in Pittsburgh. Ironically, at that same time, Paul McCartney had just been in New York before he got to Pittsburgh, and the promoter in New York was doing it too. So
cool.
While we're backstage, after we look and how beautiful I love Pittsburgh, out of his mouth comes, "Are you guys doing a Nintendo festival?" And Rich and I are like, "Yeah, we are, yeah." And we thought, like, well, how would he know about that? And what would he know? And he goes,
Yeah.
"I was just in New York," and he said, my friend, the other promoter, and he named his name,
Yeah.
he's doing it too. He says, and my kids are really into it. He says, my kids are on the road right now, and they love Nintendo, and they love that Game Boy too, you know? And he said, "I do too." And I thought to myself, if the 18,000 people out in the arena knew that we were backstage talking to Paul McCartney, and he's talking about Nintendo. I'm just standing there in amazement, right? And he's going on and talking about it. And somebody yells down the hall, "Paul, you got about 2 minutes. We're putting the intro tape on." He goes, "No." He goes, what game do you guys like?" Rich didn't know hardly anything about it because his kids were a little older. My kids were right in the middle of it, but I didn't know it. I needed one of them.
No idea.
And I mean, we were like, we just mumbled something. And he's asking us what games we like for Nintendo. And we go, "Well, I don't know. But there's a couple games, we probably like." And he's going, yeah. He said, and he went on. And finally, the guy yells down again down the hall, "Hey, you got 30 seconds. And he goes, "Hey, I got to go to work." And he left us.
Got to go to work.
Went up on stage, and I thought, it's mind-blowing that we just talked about Nintendo.
Talked about Nintendo with Paul McCartney.
I believe it. That's not a lie.
That was the original esports, the Nintendo Fest.
Totally, they stole it. Are you kidding me? Everybody thinks they know so much. I go, that's nothing. I can sit here and tell you all about Nintendo and your esports. I could create the whole thing. And they're joking around because they always, I'm not the sports guy now. And I go, it's not a big deal. We did Nintendo Festival. They competed everywhere. We had all of that.
That's crazy.
And then they went and they competed. Somebody had the idea, like some rock guy, because he took all rock crew members, and what they did was they made these, like, it would basically be like the TVs and everything now, but they made it into something so that every city they could set these up, and then the Nintendo games and Game Boys and whatever else would go in these machines so the kids could stand there and play all day long. And
That's awesome.
They did it for like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then Sunday afternoon, those that were the winners got to go up on the big stage and compete for the grand prize, which was to not only win a prize there, but then ultimately join all the rest of the country Nintendo winners in some, like, I think it was Florida somewhere.
I would have gone.
See that?
I would have gone and
Would you have
played
gone?
N64 Mario Kart and smoked everybody.
Look at that. Is that right?
Maybe.
Maybe McCartney should have had you back there because he could. So you could have talked to him because he sounded like he was pretty tuned in because the kids were like on the road. But I was like, I don't know.
Pretty tuned in to Nintendo.
You guys could be talking about it.
Yeah, I think they're probably announcing. This is a little off top. It's on Nintendo. I think they're probably announcing their new console next year. Because the new.
So that Nintendo's still around.
Oh yeah. I mean,
It's only gotten bigger and better, probably.
Yeah, their most recent console's pretty cool. It's I don't know if you've seen it. It's the Nintendo Switch. It's like the one that's. I mean, it can fit in my pocket. Like
wow.
It's
is that right?
Yeah, but you can take it on the road and you can play, or you can put it on like a little dock and then it goes into your TV and you can. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
I remember those days when we had it down there, and I remember my kids, like, they had the little Game Boys and everything, and they were. But I remember taking a bunch of my kids' friends down every day. I was going back down because they wanted to play,
Yeah.
But it was big. I mean, it was, and they did a bunch of other things too. They made this thing not just play; they had all kind of interactive entertainment of that era, and. I think it was based on, there was a movie that came out around that time that did something similar. I don't know what it was called. And then the promoter had the idea of taking that movie and bringing it to life, so to speak. And that's,
cool. I'm trying to think what movie that would have been.
You know what? I think you would probably know it, but I just don't know the name of it right now. Because the kid that played it ended up becoming like it was a child star. I'll have to find out what that is.
Yeah,
I remember.
I'm not really. I'd probably heard of it, but I can't remember.
Yeah, you do some research. Go back and look and see. Film based around that type of thing. You might find there was another show, and I'm not saying they were playing Nintendo in the movie, but there was competition like that, which somebody at that time, as a promoter, thought, hey, we could do this with these Game Boys. Why don't we do that?
Yeah, that'd be cool.
And then we'll do a national. And these rock guys were coming and setting up the shows from city to city, and they would come in on Thursday and break down on Sunday and take off for a new city, be off during the week, and then go to the next city Thursday through.
Yeah,
And when they called us, again, we were the kind of promoters that would try things. See, some promoters were more or less, no, if you're not calling about the Rolling Stones, we don't really do it.
Right.
Of course we love doing all that, but if they called and said, hey, we have a great idea, it's not, you know what, if it looks like it's a good idea, let's give it a shot.
Yeah.
Which is why we did Halloween. We did Caribbean festivals over there. We did ethnic festivals. We did a lot of things. Not everything was great, but we tried.
Yeah, you got to give it a shot.
Yeah, we tried.
Yeah. But that new console, it's pretty much like I would say it's like the Switch is kind of like a fancy Game Boy, essentially. It's like a portable way you play games on it, that kind of thing. But yeah, they're probably announcing
cool.
it's a pretty nifty console.
If
It's pretty
still
cool.
popular, it's going to be something that people want to get into, you know.
Yeah, I think Nintendo sort of has like the younger audience. Their audience is younger, you know. Microsoft with the Xbox and Sony with PlayStation. They're putting out games that are for a little bit of like a later teen, like early 20s audience and older. But yeah, Nintendo's still around. I think that they're probably announcing their new console next year.
Well, Paul McCartney probably can.
Paul McCartney might get
He's probably a sponsor now.
He might get his hands on it. They might send him one.
You know?
In the mail. Hey, try this out.
I look at that picture. You stop my place and you'll see us standing. I'm thinking, I remember that night. I can still remember it, obviously. Yeah. I also remember getting home that night, and a bunch of my friends came to the show, and they must have come back to my house. But I came back, and I was just sitting there thinking, not about the Nintendo, but like, wow. You know, because, meeting different people was, I mean, I wasn't, you're in awe of certain people, but, and it comes with the territory.
Yeah.
I mean, but I never thought I would do this when I was 21. I mean,
of course.
I mean, it'd be like if you're, meeting athletes or whoever is your thing.
Yeah.
And I mean, when we would do that plaque, you'd get that 5 minutes with them. It would be like, and you wouldn't get a chance to know them really well, but, you get little stories out of them.
You're never going to forget that.
No, I remember the one time Billy Joel. This is another good story. I may have told this, I can't recall, but Billy Joel was always popular for us here in Pittsburgh. Sold out all the time. We had an arena show coming, and the night before the show, he got sick, and I was doing production. So Rich called me and said, "Hey, you better call all your stagehands," and I think I was doing marketing too. Call your radio stations because the show's off. He's sick. I go, jeez. Night before, so I call the radio people in the morning. They get the word out for me and everything. Hold on to your ticket. We're probably going to reschedule the show. He gets better, and he wants to replay it. So maybe about 2 months, 3 months later, I don't remember exactly, he reschedules. Believe it or not, the night before the show, Rich calls me, and he was sick again.
No.
I says,
again,
I can't call these radio people. They're not going to think I'm telling the truth. He goes, well, I don't care what they think. He's sick, and we got to get the word out because they're going to show up and be mad. So we call around, and we get people to hold on to their ticket. So he comes back finally the third time. Now, he could have easily not come back. We'd had to give our money back. But, I guess he liked to come back. So he comes back, and I remember this. I remember that his tour manager said he wants to talk to you and Rich in the dressing room. And first of all, when he says that, that doesn't sound good. Because to me, when somebody summons you to the dressing room and it's the artist, I mean, not that you did something wrong right away, because it could be, but we didn't know him real well. So it's not, you didn't think it was going to be like, hey, how have you guys been? How's the kids and everything? So we go in there, and first of all, I remember him apologizing for being sick, even though we said, hey, it's not your fault you got sick.
You can't control that.
He says, yeah, and he says, I couldn't really get anybody else to be me, and we go, that's what happens when you're the lead singer. But he wanted to, he says, hey, I was thinking about maybe... I don't know how he presented this to us. He goes, but I got a little bit of a joke I thought we could maybe pull tonight in the crowd. And what do you got in mind? He says, I'm thinking that maybe I go out on stage and I will tell my stage crew now, so they're tuned in. During the first song, I'll be walking across the stage, going from one piano to another, and I'll basically look like I passed out. And I'll fall to the ground. And the people will probably freak out. So I said, it's a good thing we knew this, because had we not known this, we'd have thought, oh my God, his first song, he's sick again. So he gets out there.
Passed out on stage.
And he basically did that. He passed out. He told all his crew members who were up by the stage. He probably told everybody so they wouldn't go crazy. And I remember he either falls down or he drops to the stage. And he had a plan where like 2 or 3 of his roadies would come out to him and huddle around him right on the stage. All you heard was 18,000 people go, huh? You could hear a pin drop.
Wow, like silence.
Total, because they thought he was really,
gosh.
And I forget exactly what happened because it was years ago. But my mind tells me that you see him slowly, like it'd be like an injured player on the field.
Yeah.
You slowly see him getting up, and they help him up, and he walks really slow over to the microphone. I was just kidding.
That's great.
It was great, man. It really was.
That's great.
Yeah, I mean,
it's got a sense of humor.
It really was unbelievable. I think about that so many times.
Oh, that's great.
Man, you know what? If we'd have not known that, and we'd have been like backstage, and somebody said, "Hey, he just
panic.
passed out on stage." What do you mean he just did?
Yeah.
crazy.
It would have ruined the joke. You guys would have sent out medical people, and it would have been all
because it would have been the real
right.
deal,
A stretcher.
No, that's right. And that's what his whole thing was. He goes, "Yeah, I'll pretend like I'm getting on a stretcher or something like that."
Oh,
he might
my
even
gosh.
have one like that. But
wow,
those are some crazy times.
that is so crazy. That's one heck of a career you've had. That's pretty crazy. Meeting all those people.
Yeah.
I mean, just to say that you have a picture with. Are you in those pictures with all those people? Wow.
Yeah, just about all of them. Rich uses them on that.
Yeah, there's a couple. Yeah, I was like, dude, there's Professor Traversari when he was.
No, because he and I basically did them all together. I mean,
Yeah.
There were only a few that he would have taken that I wouldn't have been in there. It was probably because I wasn't there.
Right.
I was at another city or whatever. It wasn't like, I mean, he was always very cordial about making sure let's go do it now.
Yeah. His wife is in a couple of the pictures.
Yeah,
as
later
well.
on she's in a lot more because after we got out of the Caesar Wrangler, she was a lot more there. But you come back in our office. I got the one with Bob Marley's right there too.
I need to talk about that. Is that still like? I mean, you've done so many shows, but is that still like a top, like one of your
really
favorites?
It really is. Just kind of the way Rich described it in the movie there. It was the same. Only mine went a little bit different, only because having him play the last show was phenomenal. And we loved his music and all of that and this and that. But then when we were separated, let's say Rich and I, because I was still working for the company and he was gone already, we had both said previous to that we wanted to do something special in Pittsburgh to highlight that particular night. It was when we were not together that I thought, what can I do to do this? And he and I were still talking, but we weren't working together. So I thought, you know what? It was going to be 30 years to the date in 2010.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, I wanted to do something special that I had never done like this. And, because when you buy a band, you call the agent, they sell it to you, they comes in on a tour and you do it, whatever.
Yeah.
I had this idea that it would be great to have all of his kids come in, because he has all those talented kids from Ziggy and Steven and all them, and do a concert and let them sing the songs of their dad and make it a celebration of some sort or a concert, and then take the money from the profits and give it to them for their own. They have their own charity. OneLove.org it was called. So I started working on it, and I mean, it literally took 3 or 4 years because there's nobody to call. Like, I couldn't call the kids because I didn't know where they were.
Right.
I didn't know how to get to them. So I started putting together the plan. First thing I did was, I think I might have gone to my friend that used to work with us, is now the general manager and big deal down at the Benedum Center. So that's where I wanted to do it, because that's Thurl Stanley.
Yeah.
So I went and talked to him, and he says, hey, that's a great idea. You have to talk to a group of people. And I had to go in one day and talk to the suits, I call them. And they were all sitting in the big conference room. And I went in and I had to explain, you know about the Bob Marley thing. And they were like, yes. I go, well, I'd like to do a show. And they almost had to get their okay.
Yeah.
And surprisingly, they were like, that's a great idea. It would be phenomenal to do a show like that. So I started working on it. Where can I go? A couple of things that really made it work was, one night, Steven, his probably second son, was playing at Mr. Small's in Millville. And I said to the production manager at Small's, who used to work for us, I knew him, so I emailed him. I said, hey, I'm going to come down. Can you hook me up with the tour manager? I want to try to talk to him about doing this concert someday and maybe get to Steven. He says, yeah, come on down. So I got this picture that's me, Rich, and Bob Marley, so we always kind of bring it around. But most of the Marley people have seen it. So I get down there and I get introduced to his tour manager, Papa Pretty. Now, Papa Pretty is a Rasta who's got, dreadlocks down to his waist. And, and he goes, yeah, man, I know everything about you and your Bob Marley. He says, I'm very familiar with it. The last show ever played with the Wailers. And I said, yeah, it was. And we'd like to do a special show. It's going to be 30 years, like in 2 years at that time.
Yeah.
And we want to make it like a really break. He says, oh, yeah. He says, maybe I'll get you in to see Steven. So after the show's over, he goes, you can stay for the end of the show? I said, oh, definitely. Well, during the show, Steven starts doing songs that his dad wrote. So it wasn't just his songs, which is exactly what I wanted. So Redemption Song, Three Little Birds, he was doing them all.
Yeah.
He did them great. So after the show's over, he comes and gets me. He goes, hey, come on with me. I'm going to take you to see Steven. I said, good. We're going to go into the tour bus. I said, he goes, I'm in the bus. So I walk into the bus and there's smoke everywhere. I can't even see Steven. And I walk over to Stephen and I tell him, and we go through this whole story, and I'll just keep it short. But he says, you stay in touch with Pretty. But the end of the thing was, I stayed in touch with Pretty, and we ended up having that show in 2010 where through his work, I would assume, we ended up getting all the family members that were performers except Ziggy, who just couldn't make it. But everybody else was there, and we did that special tribute that sold out. Rita, his mother, was there. Bob's wife came from Africa because she was there the night that we played the last show. She always toured with Bob and played in a band called the I-3s. And that was really special. So the whole thing was special, awesome. Not only the show, but the concert he played in 1980. But to bring that thing back was even, it was just because we couldn't go the traditional route to get every member because they were all with different agents and different managers. And if you called an agent, he was going to want to get money for the bands. And my idea was to put them on and not pay them, but give them the money from the charity thing.
Right.
And then how we really got it was through Stephen and through his connections. They were involved in a drink called Marley's Mellow Moods, which was a relaxation drink.
Yeah.
And they were all financially involved in that. So the girl at the Bob Marley website, call it .com, she gave me the CEO of Marley's Mellow Moods number. And said, why don't you call the CEO and tell him what you want to do? And I thought, okay. So I called up the CEO of Marley's Mellow Moods, and he knew I was calling, and he said, what do you want to do? And I told him. He goes, who's going to pay for this? I said, maybe you guys could pay for it. He goes, what do you mean? I go, look, you pay for the advertising, the rental, you take care of the band. I'll get the venue. You have to pay for it. We don't even want paid. All the money that comes in from ticket sales, you get, and you can pay your expenses, and however that works out financially, that's not my thing, it's yours. And he must have talked to all the band members, and they said they wanted to do this special night. So they did come back and do this special night where they brought like one backline band, and then all the kids that came and sang either one or two of their dad's songs.
Oh, individually?
Individually. So like awesome. Julian Lennon would come out and do, I don't know, like Three Little Birds. And then he'd say, okay, and then bring out Stephen. Stephen comes out and goes into Redemption song. And
that's great.
Before you know it, they were just jamming at the end, and it was like, unbelievable.
That's awesome.
Sold out crowd. People came from everywhere around the United States because this was like a once-in-a-lifetime show.
Yeah, it's never going to happen
again. Never going to happen again. We're trying to get it together again. We tried to do it at 40 years, which would have been 2020. It was right when COVID
hit. Yeah.
So that got weird, but we still are talking about it. You know, maybe maybe be the whole family again, but maybe it would be partial family.
Maybe 50.
Yeah, definitely.
45 or 50.
Yeah.
You got to do 50 if you can.
I think you do. Yeah.
Wow.
And I mean, but you got to get them to feel it the way we feel it.
Yeah.
And that's what's we don't know that. I mean, they're very busy. All those kids are performing. They're they Marley Industries are bigger than we can even imagine. I mean, the money that Marley Foundation makes and all that with T-shirts and all that. I mean, I've heard it's incredible.
Yeah, and all the kids.
It's usually much more than it is when the person's alive because it just gets bigger.
And all the kids are so talented.
They're very talented.
They're all very talented.
I think there was 11 kids to Bob, and of those 11, there's a good 7 or 8 that are all entertainers and musicians. I mean, popular with variety of things. And the thing was, I needed the Marley Mellow Mood guy to maybe talk to the band because he was in touch with them, and somehow let them know that I wasn't looking for them to do their own songs from each band because nobody really knew their songs.
Right. You wanted
I asked him to do dad songs. Right. Yeah. So he was able to get that approved. And then the last part of this thing was about a week before the show. He called me and said, hey, they want to ask you if there's one more thing they can do. And I said, yeah, what is it? They said, they're rehearsing in Miami. They want to know if they can do the exact set list that their dad did. I go, I don't even know why I didn't bring that. Maybe I did bring it up. I should have brought that up in the beginning. But if I didn't, I go, of course, that would be great. So they did the exact set list from 1980 from beginning to end. And that's comparable. It's an incredible thing.
That's such a special thing.
There's a lot of stuff on the internet. You can actually watch some of the show. They did a documentary, but it's all taped, but it never came out because they told. Well, what I heard was it's attorneys. Everybody's got a different thought about who owns it, and how they're going to split it. But I always said it's a timeless thing, so I'm still never going to give up. That tape is somewhere. And
You gotta
could
get
be
it
aired
out.
on Netflix, and you would not know the difference. Only would say,
Yeah.
because I mean, it's the Marley music,
That
which
is such a
timeless.
That is such a silly thing to not release that. That is such a timeless like piece of music history and Pittsburgh
Agree.
history. Like get that out there.
Right? Yeah, that's
That
what I
is
would
so
say.
crazy.
So maybe someday
Yeah.
we will. But
Well,
that's the Marley story.
I would love to. I'd love to watch the documentary. I'd love to
Right.
go to the concert. If there's a
Yeah.
50
Yeah,
year,
yeah,
I would
yeah.
love to. What would that be? That'll be in 2040.
Yeah.
I'll be 38. That's insane. Wow. That's so crazy.
I'd like to get it done sooner if I could, but I
Yeah.
can't make 50 years come any quicker.
You know, you can't.
No.
Maybe a 45 or something like that.
Yeah. It's got to be when the timing is right.
Absolutely.
More for the
yeah.
artist than for anybody
Yeah,
else.
because they've got to, like you said, they've got to feel it. They've
They
got
got
to
to say we want to come and do it, like they did that one time. And I didn't think it was going to come together, and then it was really unique. I did not think it was going to happen. We worked on it all these years, and it wasn't going anywhere. And that date was on the calendar, so like in
Yeah.
my mind, I didn't want to do it on a different date.
Was it on the exact,
It was the exact
day?
date, September 23rd, 2010
Wow.
versus 1980, and I had that date on hold, and and it was like end of August, and it still wasn't happening. So I remember it was Labor Day weekend
Of that year, it was like a month.
Yeah. It was Labor Day weekend.
Wow.
And we got on a conference call with that Marley's Mellow Mood guy, and he finally, after many calls, he goes, "Hey, I finally got them to agree to do this thing. I got all the brothers and I honestly said, I don't think we could probably pull this off now." And he goes, "What are you talking about?"
You have to.
That's what they said.
Yeah.
Him and Rich both, I think, said, "Look, this is a once in a lifetime. If we don't do it now, it's probably." I know, but I said
Yeah.
we only had about 3 weeks then, and I thought
Gotta.
I got to sell this show out, and if I don't, it's going to be embarrassing. But I mean, 3 weeks is not a lot of time. Usually we sell shows out, much longer. And I said to I don't know, I talked myself into it. And that day, WDVE was broadcasting live from a Rib Fest at Heinz Field, which they do every year.
Ribfest is great.
Yeah, every
great.
year on Labor Day weekend, they go live. They'll be down there.
Yeah.
So I called up my buddy Sean McDowell, and he says, "Ed, you can come," because I want to announce it.
Yeah.
Because he knew I was working on it. He goes, "That'd be great." He says, "But I'm down to Rib Fest. I'm going to be down there this afternoon." I go, "I don't care where you are. I can announce it from anywhere. I'll be there." So I drive down to the Rib Fest. I go over, put the headphones on. What do you got? We finally got it together. It's going on sale Tuesday. Tickets are this, that, whatever. I think by Wednesday we were sold out.
That's a show that sells
I know,
itself
but
more than it. But you still be nervous.
We didn't know, right? Like we
yeah,
always
you'd have
are.
to-
It's sold out, and then before you know it, the show came and played, and it was a very, very fun time.
That is
especially for those that were there.
Yeah, I mean that's such a special thing.
It was just different,
And-
it was not your typical show.
Yeah, and that's a show. I mean, even like you didn't know at the time because that has to sell out. Otherwise, it's so disappointing.
Well,
but that's
that's
a
what I
show,
thought. That's
right?
what
But
I
in hindsight, it's like that show sells.
But see, it
itself.
wasn't a tour.
Right, it
So
was
like
just a-
I didn't know how
a
the
one-
people would react.
it was
because
a
they
one-time thing.
They weren't coming to see Bob. They were coming to see the children, but they weren't playing their songs. And no. And then plus it was only 3 weeks, but I was able somehow to market it really quickly, and before you know it, it sold. They came in. Marley's Mellow Moods guys came in. The back line came in. All the members came in. The video company shot the show.
So this whole show is on film
It's on
somewhere,
film.
and it's
sitting in
not.
somebody's
And it's
basement
not.
somewhere. It's sitting somewhere in maybe some warehouse in L.A. or something. It should be there. I mean, if it's not, somebody lost it. But I mean,
Oh,
it
that's a
literally got
crime.
shot by really professional video guys, and then they literally have it so that they could have sold it. My thinking was they would have gone to PBS or nowadays Netflix or somebody.
Yeah.
And I called, years ago, I kept on calling the guy from Mellow Moose. I said, "Hey,
Where is it?
what's going on?" He goes,
Where is it?
"It's held up with a lot of attorneys. The kids don't." I think what I kept on hearing was they can't agree on what to do with it. And it's not like it's one band where one person answers for everybody. There was so many different people. They answer. Everybody was like kind of in their own area there. That
Yeah.
type of thing. So, anyways, we'll see what
That's-
happens. Maybe we'll try to get it out there.
I think that it should be out there.
Okay. I'm going to tell him you said that.
Tell him,
That'll probably be the reason why we did it.
Yeah.
I'm going to drop your name if you don't mind.
I wish you're allowed to. I wish I had that influence. That would be
yes.
great. But I would love to see that. That's so cool. That's just like,
I would love to see it.
That seems like just a silly thing. Like,
what you can do to see a little bit of it, to get a feel for it, seriously, go to YouTube.
Yeah.
And just Google Marley Celebration 2010 at the Stanley or at the Benedum. And there were some people that used their own cameras that are very good, and they shot a lot of the show.
Wow,
so you can watch a lot of the show, but just imagine all the different things that would have gone on with the real equipment.
I mean, you could have had interviews.
Oh, they interviewed. In fact, we got interviewed. Rich and I on stage that night. They came and said, "Look, the producers want to interview guys. So before you leave tonight, make sure you come on stage." So when the show was over, they had their mics up there, and we sat with this empty house. And the guy would tell us how you guys did the show. I mean, in 2010, or I'm sorry, 1980. What was it like? And then they interviewed all the boys in the band. They came across the stage, and there was Stephen, Julian, Damien. They got interviewed after us. So that stuff is on tape somewhere.
That's such a story. It's not even just that you got all of them in one place. It's that you didn't know 3 weeks until the show. You had to go announce it at Ribfest. Like everything about it is such a great story.
Yeah, that's probably a little story in itself.
Absolutely. It's a little, I mean, you worked on this thing for years. A month that you're like, I don't think we're going to get it. And that's probably so heartbreaking. Like if you worked all that time and then
I think we might have said some of that on our interview.
Yeah.
And then, but you know, like nowadays, I watch these rock documentaries on Netflix and everywhere else as much as I can. And this could be just another one of them, that's the way it would be. And it would just be coming from Pittsburgh, and it would be, and there was a big backdrop. They had Bob's picture on it. And they brought these like Jamaican people with drums marching down the aisles, leading up to the stage. It was
show.
And his kids spoke a little bit like up there, and then we started the show, and it was just more, I mean, I can't remember it all because it was happening so fast,
Yeah.
But it was fun.
I mean, all of Bob Marley's kids and their attorneys actually watch this show. So we can talk to them right now on the camera. Get that documentary.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, hopefully that'll happen.
That's the running joke. Whoever we're talking about, they watch the show.
Yeah.
That's the, but they watch every day. So we got to tell them, get that documentary out there.
I want to see it, man.
Yeah, I want to see it.
It was really great.
I would love to. That's such an awesome story. And did you guys, that was a one show, or did they do like 2 nights?
No,
or was
just
it
one
just
show.
one night?
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, it would have been
anybody
nice.
that went there.
Probably could have done 2 nights, but it sold so quickly. And and I think they probably really enjoyed it, because I remember there was a lot of kids backstage, I think family members, that they brought with them and all of that. And I think because the family was so big, a lot of them had said that they hadn't seen each other for a long time.
Yeah, that's
so
how
this was kind of like a homecoming for them,
I mean, my dad's one of 11 kids. Like, there's family.
Geez, right.
There's family there. I haven't seen family like that for. It's an opportunity for everyone to come together.
I mean, you could imagine, right?
Yeah, that's how it goes.
Yeah, and they were coming back to Pittsburgh, and I think they knew by hearing this history all those years that Pittsburgh was the last place where he played with the band. So I knew that they had to be at least aware of it, and if anybody needed to do it, it had to be us because this is the city.
Yeah, and you guys were promoting the original show.
So we wanted to, and Stephen was very helpful in making it a celebration. And I think, my guess is that he's the one that communicated to the rest of the family to finally get to that Mellow Moods guy so that I could take it to the next stage,
Yeah, that's awesome. I just keep going back to that because it's such a... Like that's and not a lot of people can, very few people, maybe 0 people can say that they've had a situation even similar to that, like to reunite the. Yeah,
probably not. The big ones would be like a lot of promoters who did the big festivals like Live Aid and a lot of those things. So there's a lot of great things a lot of great promoters have done, but here in Pittsburgh, we had our chance to play all these great bands, but we didn't have the chance to do these large festivals like those.
Yeah, we don't really have a festival type.
Yeah, I mean, best thing we would be doing would have been those days when they were bringing like the Monsters of Rock or the Guns N' Roses, and those at the time were like mini festivals, but they weren't like out in a park somewhere where you had like Woodstock or something.
Yeah, I think we don't. I guess Star Lake now would be maybe
it's an amphitheater,
but it's an amphitheater, right? Yeah.
And we had like Lollapalooza. These would be day long Warped Tour. I mean, we did all those every year, but those were one-day festivals where it was basically they knew what they were doing. They just keep playing, and that was it wasn't like we had to coordinate bringing them all in differently. This was like when Warped Tour toured, it was really somebody else. This guy named Kevin Lyman, who's like the originator of the Warped Tour. So he puts the bands together.
Gotcha.
We just talk to him and his agent. It comes to the city. It happens beautifully. They leave and go to play Cleveland tomorrow. They do the same thing. So we just have to worry that it gets into our venue, and they're doing all that. So this one we were more hands-on because we had to be, because there was nobody else to do it, because there was no such tour. And although I think it could have been a tour. Actually, I told Rich after it was over, if we could have, when we tried, if we could have organized this at the right time, right place, and an agent, I think that we could have sold, maybe not all the same kids every night, but we could have done like a little bit of a reggae festival where it would play outside, like say the Stage AE outside place, or even a bigger one, and travel across the country and have the different bands, again, play the music of their dad, have vendors out there selling T-shirts and jewelry and the food. And I've done some, like there was one called Reggae Sunsplash. It used to tour, and we did that, and it was like a Jamaican festival that would come with different bands. But this one would have been with the Marley family. But you know what? We were dealing with too many different people.
Yeah.
There's just too many moving parts.
That's such a great, the Benedum is such a great venue because it's kind of intimate. It's not huge. Like that same concert at PPG is like you lose some of the magic.
It would have been a lot different.
So big.
Yeah. Plus, this was the original venue. The key for me was that we still had access to a building where the actual concert went down on that exact stage. Well, it wasn't. They built a stage house, so it wasn't the exact stage. Right. But I mean, it was in that same building. And most buildings they're blown out, or they got torn down, or there's something like that. Here, the building was still there.
Yeah.
And our in was because the one guy that was the overall operations manager, general manager, was one of our employees back then. He was like me, like a partner like me. He was there that night of the real deal.
Oh, okay.
So he was very familiar with it. So when I went to him and said, hey, I want to do this, and are you open on September 23rd, 2010? He goes, hold on. He says, we are open. He says, but now remember, if I get a week or 2 weeks worth of Broadway, I'm going to have to take it because I can't give up 2 weeks of Broadway for one show. And I go, no, I get that. So as the months would get closer and closer and closer, he wasn't getting booked. So he said, that date is yours. That's wide open. I said, oh, no, we got it.
That's perfect.
We definitely got to
you
get
have
it
to
now.
do it then. Yeah, at that
and
point.
so here we are 3 weeks out, and we
found out that you could do it. Yeah.
Let's go announce the show and let's put it on sale. And from there, it was simple. Production-wise, I got the sound, the lights, everybody was ready. They brought in the crew. They parked the buses. We basically put on a show. It wasn't that hard.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then I guess now we have the Yinzer Palooza. Did you guys ever have any hand in that at any point?
No, I'm familiar with the name, but have you gone? Do you know?
No, I've never gone. I've just seen the ads on. I've seen the ads on YouTube.
A lot of people do those
kind
kinds of things now, where they're either local bands or whatever. But I mean, they're all different than what we did.
Arts Festival. That wasn't ever you guys.
No, that was never something we did either. I mean, no, we did the regatta a couple times.
Okay,
remember the regatta was because that was usually done by separate companies. Arts Festival was usually done by the Cultural Trust.
Yeah, I've been to that.
Yeah. And so, but we did the regatta. One year it was going to go out of business, and somebody wanted us to take over. So we did it for about 3 or 4 years and brought bands in and everything. But we had our hand in a lot of things.
Yeah.
But we couldn't be in everything because we were very busy doing our concerts.
Yeah.
And we couldn't get stretched too thin because we wouldn't be able to get our jobs done.
Yeah, I went to the Arts Festival. The last time it was my freshman year of high school. I went to go see Too Many Zoos. They're an instrumental band. Okay. They started in like the subways of New York.
Oh wow!
And it's a baritone saxophone, a trumpet, and the guy with like a drum rig.
Wow!
And the bari sax player is actually from Oakland. He's from here, so they come here a lot because he likes to come back and play. And on the website it said they started at 6. I was like, okay. So we got there at 6, and they were already done.
Oh,
I missed them. Yeah, I know. I was so.
But then something like that happens.
They actually came back. They came back to play Mr. Smalls the next year.
Did they really?
And I went to see that, and it was a great show. It was great. Yeah. I mean, those guys, they have songs and they have albums out on Spotify, but at their concerts in person, they just freestyle. Every song was 20 minutes long. They only played like 4 songs.
Wow.
But every song was 20 minutes, and they would just riffing the whole time and going crazy.
Things like that sometimes are just great.
It was the coolest concert.
Yeah,
it was the coolest
you
concert.
see bands, especially at those kinds, the festivals like that would book those kinds of bands because they want those very unique ones. Plus, it's a free show. So therefore, they don't have to worry about selling tickets with the Arts Fest. So they don't, you can get a band that maybe is very eclectic, but you think it'll be cool, but you're not worried about if you get 200 people, who cares, or whatever the number is, because it's free and the sponsors paid for it.
Mr. Smalls was pretty full that night.
And Smalls be different. I was talking about the festival.
Okay, gotcha.
But Smalls be different. Smalls now they probably came after they played the Arts Fest.
Yeah.
So therefore, the people that came to the Arts Fest wanted to see them, so they wait and bring them back. People who went to the Arts Fest tell other people. Now you can charge a real ticket, and the band can have a nice crowd.
Yeah.
There. And that's how a lot of bands take off.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of bands like that where they played the Arts Fest or a fest like that first for free, and then they can come back and play for money.
Yeah, they had a couple little breakout moments. Like they used a couple of their songs in Google Pixel commercials and KFC. Yeah, so their music is they're sort of out there, but they're great. They're super cool.
They still tour now?
I believe so. Yeah, I mean, I kind of every once in a while, every couple months, I'll kind of keep up with the stuff they're putting out on YouTube and Spotify, so that kind of thing.
Yeah.
All right, now I got to ask you this. I went to go see Weird Al Yankovic in 2016 at... Okay, so you were no longer... I'm thinking you were no longer at promoting, but I was wondering,
No, I stopped in around 2007.
That was probably Live Nation, though. That would have been you guys if Live Nation... Did you guys ever bring Weird Al Yankovic to town?
2 or 3 times.
That show was so cool. Where'd
you see it at? Where was it at?
I think it was at the Benedum.
Okay.
I think so.
We had him over at Station Square a couple times.
I think I saw him at the Benedum.
Yeah,
but that
sure
was one of the coolest shows. He did elaborate, and I mean like an elaborate costume change for every
I
song.
Totally agree.
And
he's very unique.
Jumping around.
Oh my God, no, he was different. I mean, we had him back in the day, and then around that same time, maybe a little bit earlier, I saw him down in Raleigh, North Carolina. I was down there, and the promoter had the show, and I was able to go, and I was able to sit and watch it because I had nothing to do with that show.
Yeah.
So you look at things differently when you can go and just watch it. And I was like, wow, man, I never really watched his show when I was working, and I can see why everybody thinks he's crazy and good. And when they had sold, either sold out or they were real close, and he was doing, let's see, who was he mimicking that night? I forget. It wasn't Michael Jackson.
He's always somebody.
Yeah, it was somebody. He had plenty, but he had a great show that night, and I stayed for the whole thing, and I realized how talented he was.
Oh my gosh.
Not that I didn't know that previously, but we booked it. When you're working these shows, obviously you can't be watching the shows. You're so busy running around. You might watch 10 minutes of it and go, okay, that's cool. Or maybe you don't even like it, so you don't watch it. So I find later, I'm able to sit down and just go watch the show and go, well, I did that for the Stones when they played over here the last time in Heinz Field. We did them, several times. And I loved the band.
Yeah.
And I watched them, but I never really, you can't sit and watch them with a beer and enjoy the whole night like you normally would. So they came in, and one of my friends was involved in it. He says, I have an extra ticket if you want to come. And I go, I'm definitely coming, so I'll definitely take your ticket. And he goes, it's on the field. I go, that's even better. They have reserved seats on the field. It wasn't going to be like crazy pushing and shoving. So here I am. These are tickets that I would get normally for my friends. Now I'm sitting maybe, 20 rows back, and he had this thrust that was from the front of the stage back to the mix area where only Mick, all the guys would, but mostly him. And he would literally run over, and he'd be standing right here, and he's singing like the whole time when there's the stage.
Cow.
And I'm like, I'm done, and I'm still excited about these things. I'm thinking, this is why people love to come to concerts.
Of course,
I forgot what it was like since the 70s when I would go without working. We just don't go.
Right.
And, I was telling my one friend who works there, he says, I don't think I could sit through a whole show. I said, you're still working. I says, give yourself a few years when you're done. I'm telling you, I think you will. I mean, it takes a little getting used to it, but it's fun. I mean, you might get bored and you might want to leave, but because you're a little jaded in this industry, but if it's a show you like that show,
like the Stones,
oh my God, I loved every second of it. I thought, man, this was great. So I could talk differently to somebody when they were talking about the show than I could when we did them at PNC Park years ago, and we were just a promoter, and I would watch maybe 20 minutes of the show between running from here to here.
Yeah, that's great. Well, as in, if because I still love Weird Al's music. I don't listen to it, but I still love it. Like some of this.
Yeah,
so he's so
crazy.
clever, and like he can rap. He can actually he can rap. He can like, if that guy had decided I'm gonna make more traditional, regular music, he would be. I think he'd be huge. Because he's so talented. He can play the accordion. He can play. He was playing all sorts of instruments.
I know. The night I saw him,
crazy.
the night I saw him was more like a Space Odyssey show or something.
That was probably awesome.
Yeah, it was very space. I don't know if he wrote all the music, but it was very Space Odyssey style.
Yeah,
so it was cool. And he did a lot of other things that night, but it really showed his talent. It was great lighting. It was just a great show.
It was a whole show.
Yeah, it really was. And I watched it from a table with some other people, and I was like, hey, this guy. It's like, once again, hey, I can see why people would buy tickets. Now you look back at it.
I don't really keep up with like who's coming to Pittsburgh. Like I kind of keep an eye for comedians. 'Cause I like to watch comedians. I think Andrew Schultz, I don't know if he is, real big comedian.
Yeah, I don't know.
He came to Pittsburgh last year and I missed it.
Oh, is that right?
Like, yeah, I was so bummed out because I would have loved to go see that. But anytime like John Mulaney was here, I didn't get a chance to go see that. But I do keep it. But the last time, like I don't know, the band AJR, they came to the Pete in May. And that was the last time I was like, man, I would have liked to get a ticket to that because that's my favorite band, and they were here. But I think they'll be back.
Yeah, I mean, you have to hope that the bands will be back, and the comedians. It's hard. People try to stay up on them, the best they can. And, it depends on what you're into and what you're doing, and if you got other things in your life, sometimes you miss a show and you couldn't get to it, or you couldn't afford the ticket.
Yeah,
a lot of different reasons.
But I know they're making. I know they've already announced they're working on their next album, so they'll be back. I would imagine. And even if they're in like Philly, I'll drive to Philly.
Well, that's
to go
the next
see
thing.
a
Yeah,
show.
if you want to go and see a band somewhere in another city, sometimes they'll skip a city, not for any special reason. It's just they'll skip it because one thing I usually say is sometimes the date's not available at the venue they want to play. I mean, sometimes people would call us and always say, hey, why does this band not like Pittsburgh? And we say, what are you talking about? They say, well, they're playing Cleveland, but they're not playing Pittsburgh. Well, that has nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
It's that, we couldn't tell you guys on radio that this date they wanted is a hockey game. And that's the only date they had, and they have to play an arena. They couldn't play, the Benetton.
Yeah.
They go, oh, I never thought of that. So,
Yeah, band. Well, especially because you're talking about in the class, you're saying like they want to play the venue that makes them look good.
Yeah, they don't want to play a venue that's going to be way over, like too many seats open.
Right.
It's not going to look good.
Or that's too small that they don't let their fans.
No, we always try to
get a
find.
chance.
Every band and manager, agent tries to find with the promoter what's the right venue. I mean, that's just the way it goes. If it's a club, we start out in a club, and then they go to the next size, and you go to the next size, and by the time they get big, they should be playing an arena or a stadium. Sometimes it goes all the way up to stadiums. Sometimes we draw the line. They don't go to stadiums because, for stadium rock, that's really big. And it's also very expensive to produce an event there.
Yeah.
So you have, like that Monsters of Rock night, you got to do big numbers because you got, many bands and they got trucks and trailers and that's money, 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 security, cleanup. It just gets really. So you better be able to do big business. Seems like country bands are where it's at right now with the Kenny Chesneys and Taylor Swifts and the Jason Aldeans. And then Billy Joel and Elton John, they proved it this year. Metallica. I mean, this was a good year for concerts outside.
The Elton John show that was probably awesome. Isn't this his last? Isn't he done?
Yeah. Well, that's what they say.
yeah.
It's the last show until they do another one.
If he needs some money, and he wants to get out there.
Well, it seems like that because, we joke, but there's been tours where we were part of the last tours, and then all at once, 2-3 years later, you'll hear them going, well, we're going to do another one. They probably should.
You're going to do one more.
Don't say it's the last tour. Just,
unless you really mean it's the last tour.
Yeah, I don't think anybody knows that.
But I mean, like for the Stones.
It's like a Tom Brady, He's going to
it's my last season, guys.
But then it comes back. Okay, well, I thought you were going to be done.
Exactly, yeah. And I don't think like... But for for the Stones, it's got to be close at least to their last tour.
They're right at that 79, 80.
Or they're just gonna live forever and they'll just keep touring.
I'm gonna tell you what, when they played this summer, they played I don't know. Even 70-year-olds or 65. I don't know, whatever year I could think.
How old's Mick Jagger?
I think he's about 79, 78. They're in that. Yeah, I mean they're all in that upper 70s. They could hit 80. Like Ringo, I think's 81.
Was Mick Jagger moving up there on stage
Oh
whenever
my
they were?
God, unbelievable!
They juiced him up on something.
I don't
maybe.
know what they put on him, but even Keith Richards. I mean, they move a lot. But of course, Mick does all the running, so he's the singer. But no,
yeah.
he was running like he's always. The show's not different. He ran up and down the ramp, across the stage, just like we would see him. Now, if he's doing anything, I don't know what it is, but he was phenomenal. I mean, they say he works out all the time. He's very thin, you know.
Yeah,
And Mick or Keith Richards, all those guys, they don't run on stage because that's not their thing, but they play and look like they're, you know, well, they look different. You know, when you get close on them, of course, you know, there's some years there, like a lot of people.
Of course, yeah.
But I mean, they're still, and the thing is, they still want to do it, I guess. Because they certainly don't need the money, you know. And people always say, why? Because I think, you know, what I get from these people is that once it's in them, they just want to do it.
Can't leave.
They can't.
Not gonna be.
What am I going to do? You know, they always say like, what are we going to do? What's going to keep us alive? You know.
Yeah.
And it's like a guy that retires, and some people say, I don't want to retire because when I retire, it sounds like, what am I going to do now? You know.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing. Is a lot of people don't want to stop because then it's like the fear of what do I do when I'm done?
Right, exactly.
You know, your day is. That's why like a lot of people, whenever they retire, like they get really sick. Some of them like end up passing away because it's like you went all this time doing this thing your whole life and then you just stop.
You hear that a lot.
Yeah, yeah. But that's probably why like what is Clint Eastwood like 91 and he's still Harrison Ford's in his 80s
a lot of those
and he's
people,
still
those people are in the limelight. I mean, there's people like that everywhere, but they're in the limelight. So you'll hear that from actors, entertainers. I was supposed to have a show. Let's see, what's today's Friday? Tomorrow night, which got postponed. I told you, Frankie Valli.
Yeah.
4 seasons. 88 years old. He's still touring.
Holy cow.
88.
Yeah.
But, you know, I don't know what's wrong. I mean, maybe he has something going on, but he must not have been feeling well. But he's postponed his tour right now. But he's going to come back in April.
Okay.
So we got a Pittsburgh date, April 30. But you're talking about still touring. 88 years old.
That's crazy.
I mean, you know, we're talking about 80, 81.
Yeah.
And here this guy's 88. But
Holy
now that's
cow.
a different style. You know, it's not a rock and roll thing like, you know, like banging it out.
A little more laid back.
Yeah, because the Four Seasons were, you know, that band from the 60s, you know. That's where Jersey Boys became so popular.
You still play drums?
I do. I'm playing tonight. I got a gig at Moondogs.
I was about to ask, do you have a group that you play with?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
That's awesome.
Good Karma.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we're playing at Moondogs tonight, which is a charity show we're doing, and with 2 other bands, and yeah.
That's great.
I still do it.
Yeah.
We play a lot of. We're mostly a summer band because we like to play at wineries and McCall and Woodlands and places that are outdoors. It's that kind of thing. We'll play indoors too, and we don't mind. It's just that indoors are just a little different, you know, in the wintertime, and that's so we always look forward to the summer. But tonight's indoors because it's, of course, this time of the year. It's a club.
Yeah.
Very well-known club up there. So, yeah, we'll go out and play with these other 2 bands. And we do classic rock. So
That's
our
great.
main music is, you know, Petty, Stevie Ray Vaughan, Fleetwood Mac.
That's great.
Yeah, Bob Seger, all those kind of stuff.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
You think you're just going to... Are you one of those people you're just going to keep doing this?
Yeah.
Because your day would feel like you'd have nothing to
like
do
all
if you
these
stopped.
other people you're talking about. Yeah, I like playing, so I still do it. I mean, when I was playing in high school, and then I kept playing, but I wasn't in a band all these years, so I always kept up on it. You know, you don't forget. And then whenever I really got to Point Park, with all the time that I had in the summer, because we don't teach, gave me a lot more time to play with a band because that's a great booking in the summer, and I never could do that when we had shows every night at Star Lake or wherever it was.
That's a great combination. Like that's a great overlap.
Right.
Type thing. Like you get to teach in the summer, and then you get to
been good.
Sort of
play in the band.
Yeah.
And now, you know, we don't travel real far, so we stay kind of regional. You know, we're not going to be going to Cincinnati or Ohio or anywhere. We just stay within the Western Pennsylvania area, so we're not a lot of traveling, and we have fun. About 6 people that all like doing it, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, that's great. So we have a couple questions we like to ask all of our guests.
Well, you go right ahead.
Right toward the end here.
Okay.
What was a small act of kindness you were once shown that you'll never forget?
A small act of kindness. Well, that's a good question. Well, it probably actually would go back to I'm thinking this real quick here, trying to come up with something. Probably does stay within this business somehow.
Yeah.
You know, with the entertainment business, and probably someone like coming out of Rich. He did me a lot of favors over my many years. You know, not to bring them up what they were, but just I was very fortunate because he was, again, about 5 years older than me. But between him and his family, so many things that they provided to us and gave us when we were having, you know, maybe early times coming on that you never forget, because I always look at it now. When somebody did something good for me, you know, this is why you want to do something good for somebody else.
Yeah.
And I use that a lot of times in that giving back mentality about teaching, because, you know, when I left Live Nation, I could have kept doing that or doing something different. And I thought, well, I'm going to take on this whole nother thing and try to give back, because he took me under his arms and his wings, as they say. And, you know, that's what I try to do now with people. So that probably comes from him mainly, yeah.
Yeah, he seems like a really great guy.
Yeah, he's a really good guy.
Seems
His
like
whole
a great
family's
guy.
great.
Yeah, it does.
Very good.
What advice do you have for young people that are trying to get into the entertainment business, that are college students that want to have a career that they can be proud of?
Well, you know what? And this is for anybody in there. I mean, I think that you just have to do you have to do everything that you can, give it your all, and then be a little bit aggressive. You know, you got to be aggressive and not give up, but you really have to show that you want to work. That's the key. There's a lot of people that don't show they want to work. They just think they want to work, but they're a little bit lazy. And it's just, I don't know what it is. Fortunately, I don't think I was ever like that. So I go back to when I took that job originally. I'm working over here. I see about this job that he has. I don't know what it is. I don't even want paid. I got to get in the door. I'll work for free. I mean, those are crazy things to say, but I use it in my class all the time, because I really do think that sometimes somebody might have to come up to what I call plan B, because, you know, we're in a little, when I speak mostly in entertainment, but it's in sports and theater too. I mean, really our whole world over here, because we're not the accounting person. We're not those people. You go for an application, you get X amount of weeks off, you do this. In our business, it's more or less like, I need you here, I need you here. You can take a few days off in a week, but I'll do that. That's kind of the way we still are. So I tell them, like, when you go for an interview, don't ask about, like, how quickly do I take a vacation, or how many days do I get off for, you know, health benefits. I mean, that's going to come with the territory. You got to be telling them, I want to work, and I want to work all the nights you need me, and I want to go anywhere you need me to go, and I'll do anything. And then people sometimes digest that and go, this guy's serious. Now,
it makes you valuable.
Yeah, they're not going to make you, you know, kill yourself, but they're going to say, wow, they said all the right things. And it's hard to find that.
Yeah.
You know, and if you can find that in somebody, they're going to do better than somebody. Now, the other person will probably do well, but they may not do as well if they say, well, I can't work on weekends. Oh, okay, good. That's probably not going to be good then. Or I can't work more than, you know, this many days. And that's the way it goes. If you have a situation where you can't work, then, you know, that's the way it goes. But if you want to really get out there, and especially in these fields that could be for anybody, you got to, like, show, I'll do anything. I want to start definitely at the bottom. I don't want to start anywhere near your top. And a lot of people go like, well, why would you want to start someplace near the top where you can make more money? That's a bad attitude. You want to be the one down below, because number one, you want to only show the guys you're interviewing with that, you know that you're nobody yet, and you want to learn from everybody. But I've always believed that once you start at the bottom and you do move up the chain, and then you tell people to do these other things later, they know that they hear that you started at the bottom. They know that, you know what, he's not just telling me to do it because his dad got him this job.
Of course.
He really did it, man. He went out and put posters up, or he, you know, ran errands for the guy, or he was a gopher. And, you know, they're going to work harder for you, number one, and they're going to respect you because you did it. And then you'll also know more of how to teach them and train them, because no, that's not how you do that. Here's what we do.
Right.
And if somebody can say, well, you never did it, that's not going to be good, you know. So.
Yeah, it's sort of the idea that if you want to be a leader, if you want to give people advice, you have to sort of go through everything.
You definitely have to. And again, I think starting at the bottom is good. I mean, and that's the way most people would start, because you'd start in what we call like entry level.
Yeah.
And you want to go in. But if, you know, somebody says, I need you to just to do this, and this should be okay. Now, if you don't like the job or you're really disappointed with the people you're working for or they're taking advantage, that's a whole nother subject.
Absolutely.
But if it's within the realm of like, well, they're just trying to work you hard, and that's the way this company works. If you want to get successful and build your resume, you're going to have to show that you want to work. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. And the money will come when it's supposed to come. That's the way I always looked at it, you know.
That's a good way to look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's sort of the idea that like I try to sort of live with the idea that you can learn something from everybody.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Everybody has something to teach you.
Oh, definitely. I'm still today. I mean, I really do. I mean,
Yeah.
I always look at it that way. Like, you know, I can go to something and somebody will be there and I'll be like, you know, wow. Like, and they'll be say, well, you know, you've already done all this. I go, no. I go to these music conferences and I want to hear somebody speak because I want to hear what they have to say, you know?
Yeah.
And I think, man, if I could pick up something there, maybe I can take it back and we can use it. Because you know what? You can't know everything.
Yeah, and in your position of teaching, then you can pass
Especially in
that
that,
on.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I like it. So I'll just try to pay attention to people that are talking about something, especially related to what we teach, you know.
Yeah. What does it take to be a good leader? And how can people become good leaders?
Well, once again, it goes back to this work ethic, I think.
Yeah.
I really do. I think work ethic, flexible. I think it's good if you have a little bit of entrepreneurship in you, where
Yeah.
you're willing to step out a little bit and not just be, yes,
Yeah.
You know, you can be soft-spoken, but you got to be somebody that's going, wait a minute, maybe I should be able to do that better than this person. I'm not going to try to tell him he's wrong, but like, and I'm not trying to push him out of the way, except that he's not doing a real good job. I think I could do better.
Right.
And, you know, you're positive about it. But I think when you do that, see, then you can tell other people later, here's what to do. And then you need the respect of those people. You know, that's what's going to come with it. You got to be, like I say, flexible, and there's ethics that comes along with that. You hear that in any leader, like, you know, they don't lie, they don't cheat, they don't tell somebody something they can't do. And if you get people like that, then you want to work for them. That's the leader. If you know, I've had many people that I would be like, oh my God, I wouldn't want to work for this guy. Why? Because he's got this attitude. He thinks he's better than anybody else. I mean, you go through all those things, and then you think, only thing I always tell people when they tell me about somebody's like their boss, I go, what did you learn from that? They go, never to be like that. And I go, aha, there's the learning thing.
A lot of times people can teach you what not to do.
I mean, you know, I've had so many people, young people too, that'll come and say, you can't believe what this guy tried to do to me or tell me or to do or whatever it might be. Nothing derogatory, but like, oh, that. And I say, well, would you ever treat people like that? They go, absolutely not. I go, good. Then when you're a boss, remember this guy. And you'll be better off because you'll think, man, I never liked working for that person. I never liked going to work because of the way he or she treated me. And now I'm employing 2 or 3 people under me. I've got to like not act like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then they'll be the leader because they'll say, I'll do anything for you because you were nice to them, and you know, and you still straightened them out when there was a problem, you know.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really good point. I didn't even think about that. Like if you start at the bottom of the ladder and you work your way to the top, then when you're a leader, you've been through all those experiences, you know, okay, this person treated me poorly this way. I'm not going to be like that. And you get examples and you get all that experience so that you can sort of build your own.
And you can talk to somebody differently, and they'll probably listen to you differently. And they're going to check your past history out.
Of course.
So if they hear that, you know, you're the boss and you were hired because your dad owns a company type of thing, you're going to be like, you know, this guy, how does he know?
I'm not going to listen to that guy.
He's never done anything. You know, so the other guy who's like done all these things all the way up and he's finally working his way up, you're like, hey, this guy did what he's asking me to do. Because you're going to be asking people to do things that you had to do. I mean, one of them was, I joke about putting posters up. But when I first started for Rich, along with driving that darn Rolls Royce, I used to go and put flyers up all the time. Part of my job was getting a crew of guys and put posters up before the concert. And I would not just go find the guys. I would literally do the work also.
Yeah.
So later when I had guys and they would say like, do I really need to put posters up? I go, well, yeah, I did it when I started. And they go, you did? I go, yeah. I don't know who you think did it.
Yeah.
And so, you know, if they go, okay, then I'll go do it. You know, so that helps a little bit.
You got to command respect. You can't demand it from people.
I think so. You know, in
gotta
the big
command
picture.
it.
That's the way I look at it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. We actually, You're our new longest episode.
Oh my
Look
God.
at that.
It sounded like we were going long, but I didn't want to go extra long. You know, you were asking the questions.
No,
I
thank you so much.
All day. But no, it was fun. I'm enjoying talking to you guys.
I thank you so much for taking your time out of your day to come talk to us. It was great.
Problem. Yeah, good. Good luck with everything.
Your class has been a lot of fun. I really enjoyed this. This the stories. Like I think if you were up there teaching this class without the stories, I'd be like, I don't. This isn't nearly as much.
Come on, give me some stories.
No.
I always joke too. I tell some kids, I go, "Hey, did I tell you this story?" And a lot of kids would say to me, "Oh, you already told us." I go, "I got many more that came from."
Yeah, I got more.
Don't worry about it.
You're so knowledgeable, but the stories just add another layer to that. That's like, man, you can, tell us about all this stuff. No, I mean, I obviously know. After watching that documentary,
I can't make them up.
Some of some of those are too crazy to be made up.
Exactly. Somebody says that can't be true. I go,
well, it is
true.
Like the 65,000 tickets on the table.
On the table. I mean,
that's
an
insane. And then he told, I was like, wow.
That's right. I talk about a lot of that same stuff that he
wasn't lying. Yeah. He was telling the truth.
No, he wasn't lying.
He was. But thank you. This is a lot of fun.
Okay, man. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Take care.